Thanks for being here. This is true crime and celebrity news. If true crime and live court trials and short videos your thing, with some celebrity news thrown in, please consider subscribing to my channel and also don't forget to hit the like button. If you enjoy the content, please check and make sure the notification bell is on. Have a wonderful day and see you in the next live.
Good morning, everybody. I hope that the beginning turned out okay. My internet's kind of skipping a little bit, but I wanted to get this done because the landlord is going to use my internet to hook up some cameras. I was a little behind. She's going to get some cameras for outside to watch the dumpster. So, yeah, we got people like during the summer that have like garage sales. And they will come and bring their stuff that they don't sell into the trash, which is nice because, hey, Ronnie's picks stuff out of there that is still good. But this is true crime and celebrity news. Yes, I know we are behind. We are on day 6, 3 days to go. And yes, I know yesterday there was a verdict. Unfortunately, I think the jury totally got it wrong, but I think it was manslaughter. But manslaughter and first degree murder might be the same thing in Utah. I don't know. But Utah's time limits for prison are very different from everyone else. So I don't know when her punishment will be. I can't think of the word, or when she'll be for how long she'll be in prison. Maybe we'll find out on the last day. Maybe the judge will say what day. So let's get this started. I want to try to get 2 out today again, and figure. I know Friday I can't. I'll be busy. I'll be at the doctor, so we'll figure it out. So I know a couple of these are from the web. They're not in the courtroom. They're on the computer. So let's do this.
Chad Moore, good morning. Can you get your video working?
Let me see.
We got to be able to see you. And we appreciate you being here. There we go. Can you hear me okay, sir?
Yes, sir, I can.
Thank you. My clerk is now going to swear you in.
Mr. Moore, please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you shall give in the case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Judge, would you still like me at the podium, or I am okay here?
Wherever you're comfortable.
I'll stay seated then. Thank you very much. Good morning, sir. Would you tell us your name, please?
My name is, excuse me, my name is Chad Moore.
And just for the record, how do you spell your last name?
Moore.
What is your occupation?
I am a forensic examiner in the chemistry unit at the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia.
Is that where you are appearing from today, Virginia?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you for being here. And what does tell me the title again, forensic examiner?
Yes, forensic examiner.
What does a forensic examiner do?
A forensic examiner at the FBI laboratory receives evidence submitted to the laboratory for examination. We examine that evidence in a way to determine chemical properties or chemical substances that may be present on those items. We issue reports related to those examinations, and then we provide those reports back to the contributor of the evidence, and then provide testimony to the reports as needed.
Are the pieces of or items that are submitted to you for testing purely from law enforcement, or do you receive items from other people or locations or agencies?
All of the items submitted to the FBI laboratory are related to law enforcement and then are submitted by either local law enforcement or federal law enforcement, as well as some international law enforcement.
Okay. What is the educational background? Well, what is your educational background that has led you to that position that you have?
I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Christian Brothers University in Memphis, Tennessee, and I have a PhD in pharmaceutical sciences from the University of Tennessee Health Science Center in Memphis, Tennessee. I also performed postdoctoral education at the University of Colorado in Boulder, Colorado.
What was the postdoctoral education in?
I did 2 postdoctoral stints at the University of Colorado, one in biochemistry and one in bioanalytical chemistry.
And tell us a little bit about your employment history after obtaining those degrees and educational background.
After working at the University of Colorado, I started my career at a diagnostic company in San Diego. The diagnostic company was a company called Quidel Corporation. They manufactured point-of-care diagnostics for doctors' offices and hospitals. I was a manager of research and development in that role, and then I took a role at the FBI laboratory, working first in a group designated for the identification and analysis of weapons of mass destruction, particularly chemical weapons in my case. And then I moved approximately 11 years ago into the chemistry unit, where I've been since.
And when did you do the weapons of mass destruction work with the FBI?
We moved here in 2010, so from 2010 to 2014, approximately.
And so is it fair to say you have been with the FBI laboratory since 2010 then?
Yes, it is.
Up until today?
Yes, it is.
All right. Are there any certifications or professional licenses that are required for your position?
There are no professional licenses required for my position. However, I did go through a training program with the chemistry unit to learn the technical procedures, as well as to learn how to handle evidence, store evidence, analyze the evidence according to the technical procedures, write reports, and learn how to provide testimony to those reports.
And is that training program done by the FBI?
Yes, it is.
In addition to all of your educational background?
Yes, correct.
Okay. How long was that training program?
It was approximately a year and a half.
Do you have any ongoing educational requirements to maintain your position?
Yes, the FBI requires that we perform a certain number of continuing education hours every year. We are required to perform up to, I believe, 16 continuing education hours per year in the unit.
And have you maintained those consistently since your time with the FBI?
Yes, I have.
Are you considered a special agent or something else?
No, I'm not law enforcement.
All right, you're a civilian employee of the FBI?
Yeah, supports employee is how we phrase it.
Support employee. And
Correct.
so what do people call you? Is it Mr. Moore, Dr. Moore, hey you Moore?
I have a PhD, so I get both Mr. Moore and Dr. Moore, so whatever's most comfortable.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about your job duties in the position that you are currently in?
So my job duties, as I mentioned before, entail receiving evidence submitted by contributors for the purpose of analyzing those items in a chemical method. We look for certain exams are geared towards specific types of chemicals, as well as some exams being geared to look for very specific chemicals. And for instance, we have a technical procedure that looks for bank security device chemicals. These are very specific chemicals that are found in bait and die packets that can be found after a bank robbery. And so we can look for those specific chemicals, as well as chemicals such as pepper sprays, we can look for those specific chemicals involved in those. Other types of exams, we have general unknowns, where an item may be submitted where the chemical nature may not be known, and we are tasked with trying to identify as best we can the primary components of those chemicals.
So to boil it down, I guess, would it be accurate to say that your job is to identify, chemically speaking, substances that are submitted to you for testing?
That's correct.
I know that's a very simplified version of it. Are you subject to any type of proficiency testing in your position?
Yes, I am. I receive 2 proficiency tests every year. One proficiency test is specifically related to drug analysis, CU's drug analysis, where we receive an unknown sample and then we perform our examinations and provide the results back to the proficiency test provider. The other proficiency test that I perform every year is based on a general unknown examination. This is a unknown chemical that's provided with a specific type of case scenario, and we try to identify any possible chemicals that may be present that would fit the scenario of the that would fit the scenario as described.
Yeah, I think he's qualified. Oh my God, could you imagine having to write up his, like if he was going to be a talker or something, all of his qualifications. Jesus, there's a lot of them. Holy schmackerels. Did you have fun in life or what, dude? So... All right, it's fun to listen to. These people are just so smart. Like, what happened to me? God, I just perfected the banana bread recipe just the other day. Like, I have a secret that I do to my bread. Maybe I'll tell you one day.
And you said that you do 2 of those every year?
Yes.
That been the case since 2014 when you joined the unit you're in?
We originally only had the seized drug, and then we had an internal proficiency test. Our general unknown proficiency test is now an external proficiency test, but yes, it has been that way since 2014.
All right. Why would evidence be submitted to your lab for testing rather than to a state or local crime lab?
Different reasons. One reason is a relationship with the laboratory. Federal agencies will like to submit items to our laboratory for testing. Another reason is that some of the techniques that we have in place are not supported at the state labs.
When you say not supported, do you mean, what do you mean by that?
Either the state laboratory doesn't have the equipment, knowledge, or expertise to perform it, or they don't have a technical procedure that they are willing to utilize for that type of sample.
All right. Is the laboratory itself accredited in some way?
Yes, it is.
What's the accreditation? Are you aware of that?
We are accredited by ANAB, I forget the acronym, the standing for the acronym.
What's required? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, but we are accredited by ANAB as a testing laboratory.
All right, and that's a national organization?
Yes, it is.
For quality control of laboratory testing?
Yes, it is.
And is the work that you do reviewed?
Yes, it is. All the work in the chemistry unit is reviewed both technically and administratively. So the work that I produce, the report that I write, is submitted to another examiner that is qualified to perform the same technique. That examiner then goes through my data and my report to ensure that the report is supported by the data that I'm providing. And then he provides any changes or feedback that needs to be performed on the case, including additional work if necessary. And then after that technical review, the data and the report are submitted for administrative review to ensure that the quality standards of the laboratory are met within the case packet.
Is part of your role to also perform those types of reviews for other analysts?
Yes, it is.
If a law enforcement officer wants FBI analysis of something, of a piece of evidence, how do they go about doing that?
So submissions can come from law enforcement by writing a letter to the FBI laboratory requesting the examinations. The letters include a brief scenario of the case that's being investigated, as well as the items of evidence that are being submitted. The letter is then submitted on official letterhead or stationery. Otherwise, the local law enforcement can proceed through the FBI field offices, and the FBI field office can help submit the evidence into the laboratory.
Once a request is made such as that, how is it determined where it will go or who will be doing the analysis?
So evidence is received at the FBI laboratory by our evidence management unit. When the evidence is received, the evidence is inventoried, or it's given the case itself is given an FBI laboratory number. And then that FBI laboratory number travels with all of the items of evidence, as well as the evidence may be broken down and inventoried depending on the type of case that it is. The evidence management unit, after reading the incoming communication and the request for examinations, determines what types of exams are most appropriate. They will often reach back to the contributor and ask if additional exams that weren't requested initially in the letter, if those exams were necessary or requested. And then after determining how many exams and what units the evidence should travel to, the evidence management unit creates an examination plan. That examination plan details which items of evidence should travel to which units and for what examinations.
And at that point, is it then assigned to somebody such as yourself?
So at that point, the evidence, when it's ready to come to the chemistry unit, it's placed into a drop-off locker, a locker that is accessible by all of the examiners within our unit. We then have a computer system that lets us know what cases are available. And as the cases are available, we are assigned as the examiner for those cases. We will then go to the drop-off locker, retrieve that evidence, and then we can store that evidence in a designated locker that we have access to only.
All right. When you receive evidence for testing, do you also receive any background about the case, any police reports or anything else?
We do sometimes receive police reports. We also sometimes receive toxicology reports. That helps us to determine the best approach of examining the evidence, and especially looking for specific types or specific chemicals.
And did you receive items for testing in a case involving Meggan Sundwall?
I did.
When did you receive that?
I can just look at my notes, Your Honor.
Would that help you refresh your recollection as to the date?
Yes, that would.
Go ahead and refresh your recollection and look up when you're done.
So I received the evidence on May 28th, 2025.
Did you speak to the submitting officer?
I did speak to the submitting officer by email.
What did you receive?
Originally, I received one container, and within that container, I received items of evidence that were a glass vial with a liquid, as well as 2 syringes.
What was requested of you to do with those 3 items?
I was asked to examine those items for the presence of insulin.
And I'm going to skip forward a bit so we can refer to it, but did you prepare a report when you completed your analysis of those items?
I did.
Could we look at Exhibit 150 just for the witness, please? Is that possible?
Did you say 150?
150. Okay, do you see that item before you?
I do.
You recognize that?
I do.
What is it?
So this entire packet is a case packet that I prepared for discovery that includes all of my notes as well as a laboratory report, which you're showing me right now. This laboratory report was submitted to Detective Farney regarding my results of examination.
Okay. And the date of the report was August 26, 2025?
Yes, it was.
That'd be roughly a month after you received the items for testing.
I received the items in May.
Sorry, that's a little brain blip of mine. So that would be for 3 months.
Correct.
All right. And you mentioned you received a vial and 2 syringes that you were to test for the presence of insulin.
Correct.
Can you tell us, now we are looking at, oh, I'm sorry, can I ask to admit Exhibit 150, please?
Mr. Williams?
You tired? Can I see what you do?
Can we scroll down?
Case file?
I thought it was just the report.
I mean, I'm not sure I care. I just want to make sure what's going to be in evidence. There's 114 pages.
Oh, I just wanted the report.
You know, the look on that judge's face right now, he is over it. He's over that lawyer, the defense lawyer. He is over him. You can just tell. He's like, well, I'm sure I probably wouldn't care, but I mean, I just want to be able to see what's in it. Oh, God, really? Dude, just stop. Okay, here we go.
Do we have a designation of which pages?
We are, it looks like it's a page, or 2-page report.
Sorry, we got
That's
to
what you're
make a
offering.
speedy
Mr.
trial.
Williams?
I understand that to be so. Okay, CA 202 finished. No objection.
Court receipt states Exhibit 150 with the specified pages. Wish to publish?
Yes, please, thank you.
That FBI agent talks really slow. I did like a whole thing of dishes while he
Almost.
talked.
All right, it's up.
Thank you. Dr. Moore, you list in your report down toward the bottom of that first page the items that you tested with item numbers. Can you tell us a little bit about the item numbers? It has 2. Item 1 is centered down that first column, and then more description with additional item numbers. Can you tell us the difference between those?
Yeah, so the first column, the item 1, that designates the FBI laboratory item number.
Okay.
Those items are given to the items when they arrive in the evidence's inventory. The second column is a description of what that item actually is. And then the parenthetical item number is the item number that was given to the item when it was submitted by the contributor. The different items during inventory, the items can be broken down into additional items. So for instance, item 1 was originally received as a glass vial with a sealed glass vial with a liquid. So the vial itself, the glass vial, was then broken down into the original glass container as well as the liquid, and the septum was parsed out as another additional item called item 1-1, and that was for an additional examination by a different unit.
All right, so in other words, the glass vial was broken into 2 separate components, the vial itself and the contents of the vial?
3 separate components, in fact. The vial itself, the contents of the vial, and then the seal that was sealing the contents within the vial.
Right, gotcha, thank you. What about the 2 syringes? Did those have separate components that you broke out into different item numbers?
So the syringe that was designated as item 3 by the contributor was listed as item 2 by the FBI laboratory, and the syringe that was labeled as item 1-1.1 was listed as item 3 in the FBI laboratory. And those item numbers are based on just the process of inventory and the timing of retrieving those from the original container.
What does item 4, secondary evidence, refer to?
So secondary evidence at the FBI lab is an item of evidence that we designate as evidence. This is an evidence item that results from our processing of other items of evidence. So after processing items of evidence, if we feel that our processing may have damaged or disrupted the evidence to an extent that it cannot be recreated in another lab, we submit our processed evidence as secondary evidence. So for me, item 4, the secondary evidence is evidence that I generated in the laboratory, and there are 2 vials. The 2 vials actually contain the rinsed liquids after I rinsed items 2 and item 3 in the laboratory.
And items 2 and items 3 were the syringes, the 2 syringes, correct?
Correct.
All right, let's talk first about the vial. How did you begin your analysis of that item?
So all of our analysis began by a visual examination. And in this particular case, it was no different. Item 1 was received as a glass vial, as I said, filled with a clear odorless liquid that was sealed with a septa. When I received that item, I examined it and noticed that the vial seemed very full. It did not appear to have liquid removed from that vial. So I contacted the contributor and asked if the contributor would like to have the septum examined to see if it had ever been pierced. That examination would occur by a different unit, not by the chemistry unit. And after receiving her confirmation that she would like that examination performed, I reached out to our firearms and tool marks unit. The firearms and tool marks unit agreed to perform that examination on the septum that sealed the liquid within the vial. That's why the item 1 evidence became 3 separate items, was so that I could remove that septum and provide it to the firearms and tool marks examiner for examination.
All right, so to make sure I have my timeline straight, you received the item, noted that it appeared to be full with the septum and the cap or lid still attached. And so you talked to law enforcement and then provided it to a different unit of the FBI labs for analysis of that cap or septum?
Correct.
All right. And you did that before you completed your analysis of the contents?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I wanted to ensure that my processing of the vial did not disturb the septum in any way that would prevent those further examinations.
All right. And so you provided that piece of evidence to a different portion of the laboratory. Did you receive it back?
We did receive it back for shipment, yes.
So you received it back from the other unit in order to complete your analysis?
After we decided that the examinations would be conducted by the firearms and tool marks unit, we worked together to open the vial in a way that the examiner from the firearms and tool marks unit could observe as I was opening it, showing to ensure that any damage that occurred, he was a witness to. And so when I was able to open the vial to retrieve the liquid, I gave him the septum for his examinations, and then I began my examinations on the liquid.
Okay, so it wasn't moving physically back and forth. He came to the piece of evidence as you were removing it?
When we did open, yes.
Okay. And who is that individual?
That is Michael Van Arsdale.
Okay. And you said he is with the tool marks and ballistics?
Firearms and tool marks, yes.
Firearms and tool marks. All right. So you removed the top, and then what did you do?
So after I removed the top, the next thing I did was I removed the liquid from the glass vial. I placed it into a container that could hold up to 15 milliliters, and I took a estimation of the liquid that was present within the vial.
And were you able to determine whether any was missing?
It appeared that the vial contained approximately 9 milliliters of liquid, and the vial is supposed to contain 10 milliliters of liquid.
So 1 milliliter was missing?
Approximately, yes.
All right. After measuring it, what did you do?
After measuring it, I carried on with my examinations, which uses a technical procedure for the identification or for the analysis of insulin. That technical examination uses a instrument called liquid chromatography mass spectrometry. That technique is a way of separating components, liquid components, into their individual component parts, and then analyzing each of those individual component parts using an instrument called mass spectrometry. So in order to do that, what I have to do is take the liquid from the vial, and then I perform a dilution because the concentration of the material within the vial itself is too high for the instrument. It would just overwhelm the instrument. And so I performed a dilution, approximately 1 to 50 dilution. So 1 microliter to 50 microliters would be the comparable dilution. And then I analyzed that liquid by liquid chromatography mass spectrometry.
Is there a comparison component of this where you're comparing what you are seeing to a known sample?
There is. So after analyzing the liquid to determine, well, in this particular case, the liquid was in a vial that was labeled. So we actually purchased a similar labeled vial, labeled as insulin Novolog, which is a brand name insulin. And we purchased that one as a standard and analyzed it simultaneously with the liquid that was from the glass vial.
What did you learn?
So the Novolog that we purchased and the liquid from the glass vial were identical in terms of their response on the liquid chromatography mass spectrometry, and therefore I was able to say that the liquid contained in the item 1 vial was consistent with the liquid that we purchased from a pharmacy.
All right. And so was that your conclusion with regard to the vial that you obtained?
Yes, my conclusion for item 2 liquid was that it was consistent with containing the insulin aspart, which is the generic name of the insulin in Novolog.
All right. Did you then turn your attention to the 2 syringes?
I analyzed the 2 syringes actually prior to analyzing the liquid in the vial, in the glass vial, simply because I didn't have to coordinate analyzing those syringes with any other units. So I was able to analyze the syringes prior to analyzing the liquid.
All right. What was the request of you with regard to what you were to analyze for those syringes?
I was asked to analyze the syringes to determine if the insulin was present in either of the syringes.
How did you go about doing that?
So again, as I did with the glass vial, my first examinations began with a visual examination, as well as a microscopic examination, where I placed the syringe under a microscope to look for any residue that may be present within the barrel of the syringe. We utilized the microscope to look for droplets, liquid droplets that may be present, as well as remainders of salt or other preservatives that may be present in the liquid.
When you did that in this particular case, did you notice any evidence of residue?
I did not.
All right. What did you do next?
After observing the syringe, the next thing I do with a syringe is to remove the plunger from the rear of the syringe. That way we're not damaging anything that may be present on the needle in case additional DNA examinations or other types of examinations may be requested. So I remove the barrel from the syringe, and then I rinse the interior of the syringe with a solvent that can solubilize and extract insulin.
You had mentioned earlier that that item 4 was the rinses that you had used for these 2 syringes.
That is correct.
All right. And that's what you just referred to is what you used to basically fill up the syringes and dislodge anything that might be remaining in there.
Yes.
Okay. And then what did you do with that?
And then I examined the rinses from the 2 syringes using the same technique of liquid chromatography mass spectrometry.
What did you learn from your item number 2?
From item number 2, I did not identify insulin, and I did not see any indication of protein solution within item 2.
What about item 3?
Same result. I did not see any indication of insulin or any protein material within item 3.
What was your conclusion from what you observed and tested?
My conclusion was that insulin was not identified within either of those items.
And was that conclusion reviewed in accordance with your laboratory's policies?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, that conclusion was then approved?
Yes, it was.
All right. If we could scroll down to the next page. Does this page contain your conclusions with regard to those, what you determined?
Yes, the results of examination are contained there.
All right. One moment. Dr. Moore, if there had ever been insulin inside that syringe, would you have expected to see some residue or remnant of it having been there?
I would have expected to see that, yes.
And that's the case with both syringes?
It had been present, yes.
Thank you. No more questions.
Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Can you hear me okay?
I can, thank you.
You probably can't see me, and I think the camera that picks me up in here is going to be the side of my face because I have to look sideways to see you on the screen, okay?
Okay.
All right. I'm going to start at the end for a second about what you as a scientist in your lab is science-driven can tell us about the history of those syringes in particular and the challenges of ultimately determining from your end result whether they ever contained insulin, okay?
Okay.
First of all, let's be clear that you only had 2. Did you know from the police reports that there were multiple syringes collected in the evidence of this case?
I only know of the 2 that were submitted.
There was just some discussion about sometimes you can communicate with law enforcement about the case, maybe even police reports and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I did not receive a police report in this particular case. I only received an incoming letter.
You just received a letter saying, would you test this for insulin, right?
Correct.
All right. I want to talk then about, well, let's establish. You received this actually in the lab by mail, right?
We did.
UPS,
Yeah, right, exactly. UPS, usually overnight delivery.
send it to you in a UPS mailing. I think mine says submitted on 5/2, but maybe that chain report, May 2nd, 2025. Nominal difference between May 28th, I guess, but it was submitted in May of 2025, right?
It was submitted into the laboratory in May of 2025 and retrieved by me on May 28th.
Okay. So you get it. Did you know when it was collected?
I do not, other than from the letter. I don't believe the letter stated that.
It didn't tell you that these syringes had been collected 9 months earlier, right?
I'm not certain. If it said when they were collected, I don't believe it said when they were collected.
It didn't tell you the history of these syringes is how they were stored, right?
No, it did not.
It didn't tell you the history of the syringes about how they might have moved around to other laboratories or things that had been done with them in other laboratories, right?
It did not.
Sure. While we're on the subject, let me just publish to you. Publish from this table. Oh, sorry. No, okay. Do you have, do you still have the ability to publish that 114 pages? Okay. Can you publish that? Ultimately, Doctor, I think from in here in the courtroom, the jury ultimately will just get your pages of your report. But what page is that on? I'm going to scroll you down to a section of the full file because it contains photographs that are taken in relation to the work you do, right?
Yes, I did provide photographs.
What you do is when the evidence comes into you, you photograph it in the condition that it is received from the packaging, right?
Often, yes.
I'm going to page 11. Can you see? I'm showing you page 11 of your file. Can you see
I
that?
see that.
That's a. Sorry to interrupt you. These video sessions can be difficult to know, and I apologize right in advance if I end up interrupting you. Okay. So what we're looking at here is one of the syringes you received. This is indicated as item 2, right?
Yes, it is.
This is how you received it.
Yes, it is. Yes, it was.
So it came to you with this plunger pulled out, not all the way out. We can see the picture, but it came to you with this plunger pulled out to the end. In other words, the barrel of the syringe is completely exposed, right?
The barrel is not exposed. It's still, it's been pained.
Well, if it was pulled out, air had to go in there, right?
True, air would be in there.
I know that from trying to get laundry detergent out of something. You got to put air into the container to get it to look like that. So when you drew that out, the cap would have had to be off, right?
No, the plunger, the cap is not a airtight seal.
Air had to go in there. Let's put it that way.
Air is in the barrel when it's not covered with liquid, correct?
And you, it sounds like, didn't know that when this item was collected as evidence on the scene, that plunger was completely pushed in, right?
I had no knowledge of that.
If that's the case, then certainly you can conclude without even expertise that it was handled and managed in a way that is between the time it was collected as evidence and sent to you, right?
That if you say so, yes.
Well, if I got a picture of it being collected with the plunger all the way down and you receive it with the plunger all the way out, then you know you're not receiving the evidence as it was collected, right?
Correct.
Someone did something to it. Actually, let's move on. You don't know that. Let me get to some points that relate to why I'm asking you these questions. In your field, and particularly with regard to testing for insulin, chemistry-wise, some challenges are the insulin molecules and insulin molecules can break down, right? Insulin can break down. It can degrade, agreed?
Insulin does degrade, yes.
And by degrade, I mean insulin that once existed somewhere might not be detectable by you, even though it did exist somewhere, because ultimately the conditions that the insulin was, the conditions of what you tested may have affected the degradation of the insulin. That was terrible, but you know what I mean?
Insulin does degrade based on the conditions of storage as well as a number of other factors, heat, light, etc.
Okay, I'm going to go over some of those. I know you anticipate it. We had a chance to talk about a month ago, right? I guess 3 weeks.
Right.
So the things that can affect, what I'm getting to is degradation, meaning the conclusion that there was not any insulin in there being something that can be generalized or concluded with regard to when insulin ever was there. In the syringe, let's just keep the picture up here. Now again, you don't know anything about the storage, the movement, the activity of this syringe before you receive it. We already established it. But let's talk about the things that could have affected this syringe in terms of breaking down and degrading insulin that was there to the point that you didn't detect it in your lab, okay?
Okay.
You indicated temperature, right?
Correct.
Temperature is important in terms of the storage of what you're testing 9 months later, because heat, for instance, speeds up chemical reactions.
Correct. In general.
And temperature is important even insofar as just room temperature can reduce the insulin potency to the point of degradation, right?
Insulin potency and degradation are two concepts.
That's fair. Let me ask it this way. The ability, I'm going to use detection. I think we determined in our last discussion that there's a lot of scientific notions to breaking things down and degradation. So let's just say, talk about things that would affect the ability to detect insulin in your lab as you did, okay? So like temperature, you already said, can affect it, including room temperature. You agree?
Storage conditions do affect it. Without knowing specifics, I don't have any specific information about the time frame of degradation at room temperature of a semi-dried insulin?
Well, we can scroll down here. One of the syringes, oh yeah, it's just, yes. Let's go to the second syringe, just to be fair. This is the item 3 discussed, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so one of these was in a plunged position, and if that's a poor way of describing it, that's because I don't do what you do. But
That would make sense, the plunge position.
okay, thank you. All right, so in one syringe, you've got a barrel of the syringe exposed to air for whatever reason, and in one of them, you had it not exposed to air, you had it pushed down, right?
The barrel is still exposed to air.
Okay, and the barrel in both of these is exposed to air. We're going to get to that.
Yes.
So let's finish temperature. I mean, even in your manual and training, I talked about room, I talked about heat, you talked about temperature. I mean, even your manual, for instance, higher heat, and a specific example is given of, for instance, being inside a car, accelerates the breakdown and degradation significantly, right?
Correct.
You don't know how many times this thing has been in a car, driven around to labs, things like that, right?
I do not.
And look, it degrades even when it's kept in the right conditions over time, right?
Insulin that's not protected in certain ways, commercial insulin like pharmaceutical grade are often stored with a number of preservatives to help maintain its integrity during storage, shipping, whatnot.
Once exposed to room temperature, we talked about this in your own agency manuals and your own experience and your expertise. Once exposed to room temperature, rare degradation increases, right?
The degradation rate will increase under those conditions, yes.
Light, UV exposure. UV exposure can damage insulin and degrade it and affect its detectability in your lab.
UV exposure will damage insulin and cause it to alter, yes.
And just to be clear, UV light comes from the lights that we have inside our rooms, right?
It can, depending on the light type of light bulbs.
Regular light bulbs how about incandescent lights?
I'm not an expert on the types of lights that generate and the amount of UV that's being generated.
Okay, fair enough. We just know that various kinds of lights, even that we have indoors, have UV in them, right?
Potential, correct, yes.
Another thing is what your manual describes as mechanical stress, meaning agitation, movement of the insulin can affect degradation and detectability, right?
True, physical agitation can cause protein denaturation and fractionation.
When it moves around to be in
Generally in the liquid form.
Okay. And it can stick to surfaces, right?
True.
And actually, some of the surfaces can affect its detectability because it binds to them and becomes structurally altered. Agreed?
I think when it sticks to surfaces, it's more of a loss of material, not a structural alteration. But when it sticks, there's some surfaces where it can stick irreversibly. It can irreversibly bind and not be rinsed away.
So even if it's still there, you're not going to find it because it doesn't get into your rinse.
If it's on those surfaces, correct.
One of them in particular is plastic.
Certain plastics, yes.
Nothing further. Thank you, Dr. Moore.
Redirect from the state.
Very briefly, Judge, thank you. Mr. Williams just asked you about the position of the plungers in the 2 syringes that you took a look at. You don't know one way or the other whether those were extended or depressed by other crime lab analysts, I should say, before you received those items, correct?
Correct.
All right, it could have been them, it could have been anybody, you just don't know.
I had no knowledge of what happened to those syringes prior to arriving at the lab.
All right, and Mr. Williams just asked you about types of plastic that affect the quality, I guess, of the remnant, and you said some plastics. What about syringe plastic?
Syringe plastics, especially plastics that are designed for protein drugs like insulin, are typically less likely to bind proteins.
What does that mean? Like less likely to bind?
So certain plastics are prone to adhesion of proteins. So proteins will stick to those materials and then not release, so they become irreversibly bound. Medical grade plastics that are designed for protein injections, such as insulin, human growth hormone, even things like the GLP-1 inhibitors that are out on the market now, those types of proteins are packaged and utilize plastics that are less likely to absorb the protein onto their surface.
Okay. And Mr. Williams just went through some examples or things that may potentially affect remnants in syringe: time, storage conditions, temperature, light movement. With consideration of those and with your educational background, your years of experience, your knowledge of the capabilities of your testing equipment, are you confident in your conclusion that neither of those two syringes had contained insulin?
I'm confident that my conclusion that they did not when we received them. That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Let me clear this up, that they didn't have insulin when you received them because your testing didn't show that there was insulin when you received them, right?
That's correct.
You're not making any conclusion about whether they might have had insulin 9 months before that.
I can't determine what happened to the syringes prior to my receiving them, whether they contained insulin and it was rinsed or removed in any way.
So in terms of, again, when you received them, we talked about all the degradation, but it's certainly scientifically possible that they did have insulin in them 9 months before, but not insulin that you could detect in your laboratory when you did the test. That's your conclusion, right?
I mean, it's very, like I said, I have no knowledge of what happened. So.
Thank you.
Anything else from the state?
And just to reiterate, I guess your conclusion was that these syringes had not been or had not contained insulin. Is still a conclusion that you're confident in proffering?
All I can say is that they did not have insulin when I examined them.
Well, the request was for you to test whether they had contained insulin. And you knew from when you received them that there was nothing in those syringes in particular, correct?
When I examined them,
Sorry, let me rephrase that. The syringes were empty when you received them.
when I received them and did my examinations, I saw no indication of any liquids or residues from salts, buffers, preservatives that would normally be found in an insulin preparation.
And had insulin been inside those syringes, you would have expected to see some remnant, some molecular remnant of that present.
I would have seen some sort of residue, either glycerin preservative, which isn't going to evaporate, or solid crystals from the buffers or other salts.
And you did not see any of those indicators of presence of insulin?
I did not.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if we're beating a dead horse. I'm sorry. I don't know what the questions that are come back to, whether your lab can conclude that the syringes never had insulin in them. I mean, we specifically talked about that in a recorded interview a couple of weeks ago, right? Remember that?
I can't say that they never had insulin in them, but I did not see any indication that insulin was present in them from as they were received without having been manipulated in some other way.
And so the conclusion is, though you didn't see them, and when I asked you, it's certainly still possible based on all these other degradation variables that insulin did exist in the barrels of those syringes proximate to when they were collected. And you answered, it's certainly possible that it did. You remember that?
It is. It's certainly possible that they had insulin at some point, and that has now been removed.
Thank you.
I don't have any information on that.
Thank you.
Counsel, can this witness be released?
No objection.
Appreciate your time, Doctor.
Dr. Moore, thanks for being here. Try to have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Are we ready with our next witness?
We are, Judge.
Thank
I
you.
believe. He is also online and would have to be admitted.
The name?
Oh, sorry, Michael Van Arsdale.
Do you want to take a break and try and
I've let him know it's a lot.
get your witness on?
We would just review instead of that. Fine.
He's not on right now.
Wasn't on yet.
Let's take a short break until we can get the witness on. Ladies and gentlemen, the jury, you are admonished by the court that it is your duty not to converse among yourselves or to converse with any other person on any subject of the trial, and it is your duty not to form or express an opinion thereon until the case is finally submitted to you. This includes no individual research on the parties, attorneys, or claims.
All rise for the jury.
So what do we think? Was there insulin in the bottles or not in the bottles? My God. I'm over there making banana bread. I'm trying to keep busy. I'm developing a lot of health issues because I'm not keeping busy enough. And one of them happens to be a very bad case of chronic pancreatitis because my triglycerides are really high. And it's very, very painful. So I'm trying to keep busy. They won't give me my diabetic shot anymore because of the chronic pancreatitis. So I'm trying not to eat. I feel like water at this point is making my blood sugar high. So I'm just trying to keep busy. But I want to know, I mean, why did they constantly say, I don't know if there was insulin in the bottle, but the lady was like, but you told me you could tell me if there was anything in the syringes. But when he received them, the defense attorney wants to know if he can tell what was in there 9 months ago. So, man, she's going to have a good appeal. I'm telling you. A good appeal. All right. Well, because we go zoom, zoom, zoom. All right, here we go. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And leave a comment. Let me know how you're enjoying the recordings.
Stay ready with your next witness.
We are Judge State. We call Michael Van Arsdale.
Thank you. Michael Van Arsdale, I can see you're here on WebEx. I need you to get your camera working. Let us know that you can hear us.
Yes, Your Honor, I can hear
There we
you.
go. Thanks for being here. Our clerk is now going to swear you in.
Mr. Arsdale, please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you shall give in the case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Counsel.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning. I'm the one waving at you, so you know who's talking to you.
Good morning.
Would you tell us your name, please, and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Michael Van Arsdale. Last name is spelled Vanarsdale.
What is your occupation, sir?
I'm a physical scientist, forensic examiner.
Who do you work for?
I work for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, specifically assigned to the Firearms Tool Marks Unit at the FBI lab in Quantico, Virginia.
Is that where you are appearing to us from today?
I'm in Virginia today, but I'm not currently at the lab now.
All right. In Virginia, though, not Utah.
Yes, I am. Yes, that's correct.
How long have you been a forensic examiner with the FBI?
You know, this lawyer thinks she's funny. Like, you're in Virginia, you're not in Utah, right? Well, by camera, he's in Utah. All right, I'll stop.
I entered the forensic examiner program in 2015. I've been employed with the FBI for 28 years now.
What were you doing before entering the forensic program?
I've had a number of different jobs within the FBI laboratory, beginning with an internship that I started during my summer between my junior and senior year of college. I then entered the FBI as a physical science technician in the Firearms Tool Marks Unit. From there, I moved to become a request coordinator in our evidence control unit. This was a position in which I was managing cases, moving evidence throughout the lab to different examiners. I was promoted to a supervisor in that position and subsequently transitioned to the evidence program manager position in the FBI laboratory for a short period of time before I transitioned back to the Firearms Unit to become an examiner.
All right, and you have been an examiner, you said, since 2015?
That is correct.
All right. What educational background do you have that led you to that position?
I have a Bachelor of Science from the University of Michigan.
In what?
My degree is actually in natural resources and environment.
And so the bulk of your, I guess, training and experience would have been on the job, it sounds like?
That's correct. There's an extensive training to become qualified as an examiner with the FBI laboratory.
What is that training? How long is that?
The training itself was approximately 3.5 years for me to complete. It involved the receipt of a training manual, which is dictated by our quality assurance manual. The training manual outlined all the elements I needed to show competency in, to include firearms development and ammunition development, as well as tool manufacturing and development as well. There were a number of exercises throughout the manual that I needed to complete under the guidance and review of a qualified examiner. This gave me experience in reviewing tool marks, comparing tool marks on a microscope, and generating conclusions regarding those comparisons that I generated. At the conclusion of my training, I was tested in oral and written format and completed a series of competency tests in which I was provided items to compare and what needed to come up with the proper conclusion on those comparisons.
And since that time, have you had continued quality or competency reviews?
Since that time, annually, I'm proficiency tested in both firearms and tool marks.
You mentioned those two things together. Is it one unit within the laboratory, firearms and tool marks?
Yes, it is. Firearms is actually a subdiscipline of tool mark examination. Tool mark examination is the examination of items, marks on items to determine whether or not they were produced by forceful contact of a particular tool. Firearms identification, as I said, is a subset of that, in which that firearm is a tool or a combination of tools that is going to mark ammunition components. And so there's similar paths in regards to pattern identification.
I don't know if you can break it down, but is there can you tell us an idea of what amount of time you spend on firearms versus tool marks?
I don't know that I can break down the amount of time. I would say the vast majority of my time is spent with firearms and ammunition, with a component that is spent with tool mark items.
All right. Are there similarities between comparisons for tool mark, what you're examining for tool marks with firearms?
As I mentioned, the firearm is a combination of tools that is going to mark ammunition components. Those marks on ammunition components could be considered as tool marks. So you have areas from the barrel, the firing pin, the extractor. Those are all going to leave marks on the ammunition components, the bullets and cartridge cases. And that pattern would then be compared back. And very similar to a screwdriver marking an object, leaving a striation, that would be considered a tool mark. And the comparison or the pattern on that object to that screwdriver, they're very synonymous.
Okay. How do you examine items? Is it just visually or something else?
The majority of my examinations is conducted visually using either a stereo microscope or a comparison microscope.
All right. So more than just your naked eye, it's under a microscope of some type?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And when you complete an analysis, whatever you're requested to do, does it undergo any kind of a quality control or review process?
Once my analysis is complete, I will generate a report of my findings. My report, as well as all of my notes, will undergo a technical review in which another qualified examiner will review all of my findings and my report prior to issuance. After that technical review is complete, an administrative review will be done, which is typically done by a supervisor within the unit. And there again, I'm going to review through my notes as well as my report to make sure I follow the appropriate procedures and protocols, and that my report and my findings are logical and clearly understood.
Is part of your job to also perform technical reviews of other analysts' work?
Yes, I will perform both technical and administrative reviews.
I talked to Dr. Chad Moore just recently, just before you, about the certifications of your laboratory, and I would assume that those same certifications apply to your division in the laboratory.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, so I don't need to go over that unless there's something different about tool marks from the forensics examination that he does. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's fair to say.
Okay. When you receive an item, what information do you receive with it for your examination?
When items are received in the laboratory, they're generally shipped to the laboratory through some trackable method. They're received by our evidence management unit, and they'll be assigned a laboratory number. Within that laboratory number, that will be the tracking for that case through the building. The items that were submitted will be assigned an item number, and that will be documented on the chain of custody for each transfer. All of this information will go into our laboratory management system, our LIM system. So we have a digital chain of custody, as well as copies of any incoming communication that was generated by the contributor providing us case information. So I will have that item, I will have a description of the item that was submitted along with the item number that was assigned in our evidence management unit or the unit that conducted inventory, and then a brief synopsis of the case within that management system.
Okay. As I understand it from talking to Dr. Moore, you were essentially brought into this particular case by him. Is that accurate?
That is my understanding as well, yes.
Tell us what happened to get your involvement here.
My understanding was that Dr. Moore had contacted a contributor, and a subsequent request beyond chemical analysis request was to determine if a portion of the vial had been punctured or marked with any kind of tool marks.
Okay. How did you begin that particular analysis?
That analysis began by me actually receiving a vial of insulin from Dr. Moore.
What did you do with it?
At that point, the vial was closed. It had a cap present on top of it. My first job was to look at this cap, look at the insulin to see if there are any marks on the cap portion, metal cap, that indicated that there was any entry other than the rubber stopper that was on top of the vial.
Let me jump ahead a little bit because I'd like to refer to your report. Let me show you what's been marked as Exhibit 149, 149. Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
All right. And do you recognize that document?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
That is a copy of the report that I generated regarding this case.
All right. Can we go down one page? Not yet. There's the signature. Okay. And this is page 4, I guess. Do you recognize the name on that document?
Yes, that's my name.
And does this accurately, I can't say that word, reflect what you prepared in response to your analysis in this case?
Yes, it does.
State would admit Exhibit 149.
Okay.
You court received States Exhibit 149, which published.
I do.
I'm assuming that's similarly just the conclusory report. This file is
This one contains the photographs I wanted that you took, so I wanted to look
okay.
at
This
those.
is 13 pages then?
Yes, 13 pages.
Thank you.
Just verifying that. Yep, 13, okay. Can we go down to the first set of photographs? Okay, does that look familiar to you, Mr. Van Arsdale?
Yes, this is a copy of my notes generated during the analysis of for this case.
Okay, what do these photographs reflect for you?
These photographs are the as-received condition of the vial that I received from Dr. Moore.
What did you note about that vial?
At the time, I was looking at the metal silver cap on top of that vial, looking for any kind of markings that might be present.
Did you find any?
I did not note any markings, abnormal markings or markings that didn't appear to be from manufacturing.
What did that indicate to you?
And to me, at that time, it indicated that there was no apparent entry through the cap of this vial.
This cap, let me first clarify, these two photographs are the same vial, correct, front and back?
It's front back, and actually, if we were to move down, there's one more angle that I had taken at. So I've taken 3 photos just rotating that vial.
Okay, all the same vial though.
That is correct.
Tell us about that cap. You're talking about the silvery kind of topper on that particular bottle?
Yes, there's a metal cap that was crimped at the top of that bottle.
And by crimped, what do you mean?
It would be squeezed shut. Think of like an old bottle of Coke that had a metal cap, or a beer bottle that has a metal cap that is squeezed, crimped shut.
Is this one that typically is intended to be opened manually?
No, this would not be easily opened manually.
All right, so, and you said you didn't note any indications of having been opened with any type of tool?
No, I did not note any markings indicating that it had been opened.
All right, and so what did you next do with that item?
I subsequently returned this item to Dr. Moore. Dr. Moore in the chemistry unit had tools that could be used to uncrimp this and separate that cap from the vial.
And if we could scroll down to the next set of photographs, please. Oops, those are closer up photos of the unmarked cap.
That's correct.
All right, and keep going. Okay, stop, wait, go back. What does this photograph reflect to you?
This is the top of the vial with the cap present on it. In the center of that cap is what's called a septum, which is a rubbery silicone material that was part of the design of the vial and the cap.
All right, and this is before anything was removed?
That's correct.
All right, if we can continue scrolling down. And that's what is this set of photographs?
This set of photographs represents after the cap had been removed, and I had documented the condition of that cap at that time.
All right, in the photograph on the bottom, it looks like there are some alterations to the circularity, I guess, of the cap. What does that reflect to you?
Again, and this and the next 2 photographs will document the condition after a crimping tool or decrimping tool was used to squeeze and release the crimp of the cap from the vial.
Okay, is that what you mean by tool marks that we can see on these 2 photos on the top half of the page, sort of almost indentation on that cap?
Those would be examples of tool marks placed on that cap now from a tool, a decrypting tool.
All right, and that is what you received after Dr. Moore opened the bottle?
After I had done my initial examination of the bottle, I returned it to Dr. Moore. He used the tool to remove the cap and then returned the cap to me for further analysis.
All right, and so underneath the top 2 photos is a 2-piece or photograph with 2 parts in it. What are those 2 parts?
So as I mentioned before, when you saw the top of that vial, you had the metal ring of the cap, and then in the center was a septum, or that rubber material. This is a photograph after I had removed that rubber disc from inside that cap. So now the cap has 2 components, the metal ring and the rubber silicone septum.
And the rubber silicone septum is the piece on the right side of that photograph?
That's correct.
Okay, what did you do with that item?
I documented this item, photographing it top and bottom. What you see in this photograph would be what I would consider the bottom, the inside facing the liquid. I then cleaned that material on the outside, on the exterior portion with some alcohol, and I began to look at that rubber or silicone material for any kind of indications of tool marks or any kind of penetrations.
How did you look at it?
Using the 2 microscopes in my lab suite, the stereo microscope and the comparison microscope, I began to look at that with different lighting and then begin to actually fold back the material or bend that material to kind of stretch to see if there were any kind of indications of holes that might be present.
Before you put it under the microscope, were you able to discern anything in the septum of that item?
On the exterior, I could note markings that were present on the item, but it really wasn't until I put it under the microscope that I could see that detail.
All right, let's scroll down to the next photo, please. What did these photographs show you?
And this is that septum. On the left is a photograph of the exterior. You can see that darker area. That would be the exposed portion. When the septum was in that cap, that was that exposed portion that you were able to see in the prior photograph. On the right is the interior, the inside, that would face the liquid of that septum.
All right, and that was as you were beginning your analysis of this item?
That's correct.
All right, can you scroll down some more, please? What is this photograph?
This is a photograph of the interior side of that septum, and this was using my comparison microscope. I had taken that disc, that rubbery disc, and bent it back so that the 2 sides were nearly touching, and then moved along the middle portion of that.
And what did you find?
There were a number of holes that I was able to visualize through the interior portion of the septum.
How many holes did you find?
There were approximately 13.
All right, and that is reflected in this photograph?
Yes.
Can we scroll down one more, please? What is this photograph?
This is now a photograph of the exterior of the septum under magnification on my comparison microscope. This is during that examination that I was able to see indications of tool marks present on the exterior as well.
And what type of tool marks were you able to discern would have caused those marks?
These are perforations or punctures through that material.
Do you have any opinion as to what would have caused those punctures through the material?
They are physically consistent with a needle or a very sharp, narrow object.
Here is one more photograph. What is that?
This is lighting of that septum from the exterior, and I can see lighting it this way channels from where an object like a needle had penetrated through the septum.
What does that mean to you?
Again, this is indicative that it's physically consistent with a very narrow object like a needle.
Right. Could I show you Defense Exhibit J on your screen? Do you see, can you see that, sir?
Yes, I can.
All right. On the second shelf, there is a plastic syringe type object. Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
Can you zoom in on that a little bit, if possible? Do you have an opinion as to whether that item is consistent with the punctures that you saw in the septum of what you examined?
I would unfortunately need to see if there is a needle at the end of that syringe.
Okay, so it would be something with a needle, correct?
Yes.
All right. You said there were 13 puncture marks that you observed. Does that mean that it had been accessed, I guess? The bottle had been accessed 13 times?
At least 13 times. There may be more. If those marks, if a needle had penetrated through one or more of those holes multiple times, then I wouldn't be able to tell you the total number.
Okay, so if it went through, it didn't make a new hole. Is that?
Possibly, or cross over from an exterior to one of the interior holes. The numbers could be different, but at least 13 entries.
And were punctures all the way through, or were some of them like just indentations?
They appear to penetrate all the way through.
All 13?
Again, it's hard for me to say. I could have 13 holes on the interior, so there were at least 13 entrances into that vial.
Into the interior vial.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I think that's all the questions I have for you, Mr. Williams. We'll likely have some as well.
No questions.
Can this witness be released?
You can. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here, sir. You're free to go. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
I admit that exhibit.
You did 149?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, you did.
Thank you, sir.
Get ready with your next witness.
We are. The state calls Dr. Kacee Terry.
This is an in-person witness.
Yes, sorry. Thank you. She's outside. She's just being heard.
Please come forward up here to the clerk and we'll get you sworn in.
Raise your right hand. You just solemnly swear the testimony you shall give in the case now before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Come up here and have a seat. We appreciate you being here. If you can get that mic, pull that mic in front of you. Everybody's most comfortable. As long as you keep that in front of you, we'll be able to make a good record and we'll all be able to hear.
Okay.
Counsel.
you could please state and spell your name for the record.
It's Kacee DeSalvo, KELSEYDESALVO.
What is your profession?
I am a endocrinologist.
What is an endocrinologist?
Endocrinologist is a physician that specializes in hormones and how they work in the body, including diabetes.
Okay. I'll get to that in a second, but I want to talk just briefly about your educational background. You mentioned that an endocrinologist is a physician. I guess briefly describe your education.
Sure. So I did undergraduate at University of Colorado. Then I did medical school at the University of Colorado, which is 4 years. Then we do internal medicine residency for 3 years. That was also at the University of Colorado, followed by a 2-year endocrinology fellowship where we go into the hospital.
How long have you been a doctor?
I have been an MD since graduating medical school, but a board-certified physician happened when I took my boards after my internal medicine residency. I was board-certified in internal medicine. And then after endocrinology fellowship, I was board-certified in endocrinology, diabetes, and metabolism.
And how long have you been board certified in endocrinology?
Since 2018.
You mentioned that endocrinology deals with the, I forget what word you, but study hormones?
Yes.
What types of hormones?
Well, there's so many different hormones in the body, but we kind of dig up into pituitary hormones, thyroid hormones, adrenal hormones, and then in the pancreas, there's insulin and glucagon. So there's lots of different glands in the body that make hormones, that those hormones act on other organs.
I'm going to be talking with you today about insulin. I believe you mentioned that diabetes is something that you treat.
Yes.
What is diabetes?
So there's two, sorry, just trying to make here. So there's 2 different forms primarily of diabetes. There's type 1 diabetes and there's type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is where the some of the immune system attacks the pancreas and the pancreas is no longer able to produce insulin. Type 2 diabetes is where the pancreas is still producing insulin, but the cells are resistant to that insulin action. They don't want to take up sugar from the blood. And so there's 2 different kinds.
And it sounds like the hormone primarily associated with diabetes is insulin.
Correct.
What is hypoglycemia?
So medically defined hypoglycemia, there's 2 definitions. One is a serum blood sugar less than 55 if someone is having symptoms consistent with hypoglycemia, less than 45 if someone is not having any symptoms of hypoglycemia.
Is hypoglycemia something in addition to diabetes that you treat in patients?
Yes, so I probably see a patient who has hypoglycemia every single day in my clinical practice, and that's because I see a lot of patients with diabetes who are using insulin, and if they dose too much insulin, they can have problems with hypoglycemia.
We're going to come back to that. I want to cover a few, basic items first. The jury's heard a lot about different types of syringes. Is there a particular type of syringe that's used with insulin?
Yes, typically they come in 1 ml insulin syringes or 0.3 ml insulin syringes, and they have units on them. So when we talk to patients about how to administer insulin, we often talk about how many units of insulin they should be administering. So for instance, I might say you should administer 5 units for insulin to cover your breakfast. So they would put an insulin syringe, they don't have an insulin pen, and they would draw up 5 units. So in syringe, it's units instead of milliliters that we would normally see in another syringe that we fill with different medication.
Is there something different about the needle with insulin syringes, or unique or particular?
No, the needles themselves come in different sizes. So different people have different amounts of subcutaneous tissue. So we can order different size needles that go into the syringes. So someone who's really doesn't have a lot of fat in their skin would use a really small needle, just like our pediatrics or kiddos. But then if other people need a little bit longer syringes, or needle sizes, syringes.
Are you familiar with syringes that may be used, for example, to administer saline into a port in somebody?
Yes, they often come in flushes, like saline flushes. They're often that's what we call them in a syringe, and they're prepackaged. So the nurses just have to, there's needle locks on them, and they can just insert it onto a needle and then push the saline through. How is usually milliliters.
How is a flush different than an insulin syringe?
I could show you. Insulin syringes are very, very skinny, and they're very small because it doesn't take very much insulin to give a big dose of it. So they're significantly smaller than saline flushes.
I'm going to jump around a bit. You mentioned your education and training, particularly as a medical doctor. Do you know what a DNR means?
Yes, DNR means do not resuscitate. So if a patient, sometimes we say, is coding.
I see an endocrinologist too. My first time I had to go see one was when I had that tumor on my adrenal gland. And they removed it. And then I've just been seeing him ever since for my diabetes. She ain't doing a very good job because she didn't send him my medicine. But I don't know. They want to put me on Jardiance or something. My landlord said she was on it, and she said it was some really bad side effects. I take metformin. I was on glipizide. I don't know why they just can't put me back on that. So, all right. Let's keep going.
That means that their heart stops.
Hi, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
That they don't want the medical team to come in and perform CPR. CPR is mechanical pressure on the heart to try to make the heart pump blood. And with a do not resuscitate, when you're running a code, we put shock pads on patients' chests, disorder shocks, to see if we can restart the heart with electrical activity. And there's other medicines that we would give in the case of running a code. So the do not resuscitate means that in the event that the heart stops, you do not want those particular interventions.
In your training and experience, does a DNR mean that if somebody is in a clear medical crisis, you cannot touch them at all or give them any medical care?
So absolutely not. Someone can have a do not resuscitate. We can hospitalize them, for instance, and they can have an asthma exacerbation, and we can give them nebulizers, or they can have diabetic ketoacidosis, and they can get insulin. Or they can have pneumonia, and we can give them antibiotics. Do not resuscitate just really means in that moment, if their heart stops beating, that they do not want us to intervene.
Do you work with nurses in your practice?
I do work with nurses in my practice.
As part of your practice and working with nurses, do you have to have some familiarity or knowledge about what nurses would know?
Yes.
Would you expect a nurse to know what a DNR means?
Yes.
You said you work with hypoglycemic patients at least every day. Is that fair to your testimony?
Yes.
Do you test blood sugar often in your line of work?
Yeah, so most of my patients have continuous glucose monitors, which are little sensors that sit under the skin, and they will measure blood sugars every 5 minutes. So that is typically how I'm looking at blood sugars, is from these sensors that patients are wearing every single day, and we get these downloads. Now, some patients don't want to wear a continuous glucose monitor, and so they will prick their finger using a standard glucose meter, which is where they use a lancet, and they get a little drop of blood, and then there's a meter that has a testing strip, and the blood gets put onto the testing strip, and it goes into the meter, and the meter will read the amount of glucose inside that blood sample.
So you've certainly done that type of testing with the pricking of the finger and using a glucometer?
Yes.
When you're doing that type of testing, do you wear gloves?
Yes.
Do nurses that work with you do that type of testing on patients?
Yes.
When they're doing that type of testing with pricking fingers, do they wear gloves?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because you're dealing with someone else's bodily fluids, and there could potentially be infection risk. So you want to always make sure as a healthcare worker, you're protecting yourself as well. So we recommend when you're dealing with someone else's bodily fluids that you wear gloves.
We talked about your treatment of patients with diabetes and hypoglycemia. Have you ever dealt with patients with insulin overdoses?
Yes.
Now, you've been retained as an expert in this case by the state of Utah, is that right?
Yes.
And you've reviewed certain items relevant to the case?
Yes.
What have you reviewed in this case?
So I have reviewed the hospital records from when Kacee was admitted to the hospital. I have reviewed a PDF of blood sugars, including the time that those blood sugars were taken and those values. And I have reviewed a preliminary hearing transcript. Those are the documents I've reviewed.
Okay, and talking about a preliminary hearing transcript, that's a prior hearing that occurred in this case. Do you remember whose testimony you reviewed?
Yes, there was a medical examiner, and then there was the primary care physician who was treating her in the outpatient setting.
You were not given to review text messages?
Correct. I'm not reviewing text messages.
Police reports?
No.
You've not been given to review consultations with potential other witnesses or other experts that may be involved in the case?
I am not.
Do you feel like, well, actually, I'll get to that in a second. The jury has heard quite a bit from a bunch of different witnesses already about insulin, and so I'll try to keep this brief, and I know that you're the insulin expert, so as...
Objection, characterizing who's what capacity at this trial. Just have one of the stages ask your questions.
Sure.
I'll sustain the objection. Let's move on.
I was just going to say that we'll try to keep it brief. So to the ability you're able to do that. And you kind of already described in type 1 diabetes versus type 2, but briefly tell us what insulin does.
Okay, so insulin is made by the pancreas. It gets secreted and it travels to every single tissue in the body, and it helps those cells take up blood sugar that's in the blood, so your body can use that later for fuel. So it puts sugar into muscles and into fat. If you believe it or not, there's only 1 teaspoon of sugar actually floating around everyone's blood. And so when you eat something that's really high in sugar, or carbohydrates is another word we use, your body has to have a way to put that sugar into muscle or into fat so you can use it later for energy. And insulin is the key that kind of unlocks those cells that allows glucose to move from the blood into that tissue.
Is insulin necessary in some form in the human body for it to function?
Yes.
Is there, I guess, what is endogenous insulin?
Endogenous insulin is insulin that is made by the pancreas, and it is secreted as something called proinsulin, which has a C-peptide chain attached to the actual active insulin molecule. And when it gets released, the C-peptide gets cleaved from the insulin, and that activates the insulin so that it can go to every single tissue to try to get glucose into those cells.
So endogenous, fair to say that's created by your own body?
Yes, endogenous means created by your own tissue, by your own cell. Exogenous insulin means insulin that was produced by a pharmaceutical company. It's chemicals, molecules that are very structurally similar to endogenous insulin, but different. And those are insulins that we can give by injections.
And maybe we already covered this, or it may be obvious, but in what sorts of circumstances would someone need exogenous insulin?
So people with type 1 diabetes need both a long-acting insulin and a short-acting insulin. Sometimes long-acting insulin we call basal insulin. And there's many patients with type 2 diabetes where their body still produces insulin, but their tissues have such a great insulin resistance. You need more insulin to kind of help those cells kind of open up those doors to allow glucose to go in. So there's a lot of patients with type 2 diabetes who also need to be on insulin products.
If a patient is not diabetic at all, and their body is producing endogenous insulin normally, would they have any need for exogenous insulin?
Absolutely not.
What might happen if a non-diabetic patient receives exogenous insulin?
So that insulin would be absorbed by the body, go into the bloodstream, and then it would start acting like endogenous insulin. It would start telling those cells to pull glucose out of the blood. And if that's an inappropriate release or use of insulin, the blood sugar is going to start to drop because your body didn't need that extra insulin. So blood sugars will be low, and that is hypoglycemia.
Is hypoglycemia dangerous?
Yes, so hypoglycemia can be fatal.
In what circumstances?
So the most important tissue that you have that's really sensitive to hypoglycemia is your brain. So your brain relies on glucose coming in from the blood in order for it to function. And if you don't get enough glucose, your brain cells start to die. And there's something in your brainstem that tells your body to breathe. And so if those parts of your brain start starving because they don't have glucose, they start dying, they can no longer tell your body to breathe. And so then oxygen levels will start to drop because you're not taking big breaths, you're not able to get oxygen to your cells.
You mentioned the brain. Are other organs in the body, does hypoglycemia affect other organs in the body?
Yes, every single tissue needs glucose to basically have those cells stay alive. So the heart, the kidneys, the liver. But the brain is very sensitive because unlike the liver actually can store glycogen, which is, it can break it down into sugar, the brain doesn't have a way to store sugar. It's totally reliant on the rest of the body delivering sugar via the bloodstream.
Is the amount of time that a patient may present with hypoglycemia important?
Yes, so if you start to have low blood sugar hypoglycemia, the sooner you intervene, the less likely you are to have long-term neurological damage or damage to your brain cells. So if you correct that very quickly, people can go back to their normal baseline. How if their brain is starving glucose for hours, then we often see cognitive
deficits where people don't recover back to their baseline. They can't think like they used to. Certainly, if there's hypoglycemia that can precipitate a seizure, that is very damaging to the brain tissue.
So it sounds like hypoglycemia can reach a point where there's that irreversible brain damage.
Yes, you can get irreversible brain damage from hypoglycemia.
Can it also be fatal?
Yes. So at some point, your brain will no longer have enough sugar and it'll start to shut down, and then your lungs don't get the message to take in deep breaths. And when that happens, oxygen levels start to fall, and every single tissue in the body will start to die because every tissue needs oxygen.
As blood sugar drops in a person, what symptoms do you typically see?
Well, if you didn't have anxiety before this, you certainly do now. God, she just made me have really bad anxiety. Okay, here we go.
So there's two types of symptoms people can get from hypoglycemia. The first is symptoms related to adrenaline release or epinephrine release. So your body tries to correct the hypoglycemia by secreting a lot of epinephrine. And so epinephrine makes people really hot, really sweaty. It can make their heart start beating really fast. They can start to feel anxious as kind of like a stress response to the hypoglycemia. The other symptoms are the brain's response of not getting glucose, which is slurred speech, confusion. Sometimes people almost seem like they're drunk or intoxicated because their brain's not functioning well. And then after that, they can start to slip into a seizure or a coma. And then after that, they don't wake up.
You mentioned before that if the brain is being deprived of glucose, that it can affect the breathing. Is that right?
Correct.
I guess, are there any symptoms you would see with breathing in somebody that is hypoglycemic and blood sugars are dropping?
Yeah, they will no longer be able to take in full deep breaths with their lungs. So where you inhale and exhale, you lose that, the muscles lose that ability to take in those deep breaths. And so you can't draw or pull in oxygen into the lungs. So people will start to breathe very shallowly.
Have you heard the term death rattle?
I have.
What does that mean to you?
A death rattle, when people are dying and their breathing patterns become irregular, they don't take in deep breaths, and a lot of times they can't move secretions, so you can't swallow. So secretions start getting into the trachea, into the airway, and that can cause an auditory sound that you can hear when people are dying.
Are you familiar with the condition of sleep apnea?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Obstructive sleep apnea often means that when people are sleeping, their breathing patterns will sometimes pause. They either are obstructing, either the tissue is kind of compressing their airway or something in their brain, it momentarily pauses. Then oxygen levels start to drop. The brain can sense that and will send a signal all of a sudden to tell the body to take in a deep breath. So sometimes people will gasp awake. So sometimes people are snoring, they'll stop for a few seconds and then they'll kind of will gasp to pull in all that air to correct the hypoxia or the low oxygen levels in the blood.
What you described as a death rattle, is that something consistent with what you might see in a hypoglycemic patient? The sugars are too low, it's
if they've been down long enough that their brain stem is shutting down and they're not taking in deep breaths, then yes, you could hear kind of a death rattle.
Does that sound different than sleep apnea breathing?
Yes.
Would you expect even a layperson to understand the difference between, or hear the difference between those kinds of breathing?
Yes. It is very alarming to hear someone doing a death rattle and not taking in deep breaths in and out.
Would you expect a nurse to understand what a death rattle is?
Yes.
I want to talk about at what point hypoglycemia becomes, well, let me just ask you, at what point does hypoglycemia become a medical emergency?
Really, when your blood sugar starts dropping less than 45 and if it's not intervened upon, that is a medical emergency. So when we have patients admitted in the hospital and they have a low blood sugar, that is a call to the physician to say that this patient does have a low blood sugar. This is what we did to correct it. We will keep checking the blood sugars, but this is not something that is ignored. Also, when we get outpatient labs and someone has a low blood sugar on their electrolyte, their basic metabolic panel, there is a mandatory call from the lab to the physician or the nurse practitioner's office to say, hey, we have a critical alert is kind of what they call. And so we have to call our patients and say, hey, are you okay? Did you correct your low blood sugar?
Would you expect a trained nurse to know this?
Yes.
Even a nurse that doesn't specialize in endocrinology or hypoglycemia?
Yes, so hypoglycemia is part of their nursing boards. It's part of their normal nursing curriculum. Nurses who treat patients in the clinic, treat patients in the hospital, they know what hypoglycemia is.
I'm going to show you what's already been admitted as States Exhibit 10. It'll maybe take a second, but it'll pop up on your screen right there. And if we could also, since it's been admitted, publish it for the jury.
Maybe.
Do you see that on your screen?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I can see it.
Do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
What is this?
This is a spreadsheet of glucose levels and the time that the blood sugars were drawn.
And this is for whom?
This is for Kacee.
Is this something you reviewed in preparation for your testimony in this case?
It is.
All right, I want to go through, and the jury's already heard that we see, oh, sorry, mine just disappeared. There we go. We see the date, BG level. What do you take that to mean?
So the date is the date that this was, the date the blood sugars were collected. BG level means blood glucose.
And then do you understand the difference between here, the monitor time and the actual time?
Yes. So you have to set the time on a monitor, just like with old clocks or things. You have to set the time and set the dates for those to be correct. So sometimes patients don't set the accurate time.
So is it your understanding in reviewing materials for this case and coming to conclusions, are you relying on, what time are you relying upon?
I was looking at the actual time when I was reviewing this.
All right, I'll start from the top. What's that top blood glucose level that we see?
So top blood sugar is 87, which is a normal blood sugar.
I guess what's the range that you would consider normal in a non-diabetic person?
Normal is typically 80 to 120, but we don't call something as hypoglycemia until it's less than 55 if people are having symptoms. So often in a fasting state, you can see blood sugars in the 60s and 70s, and those still are considered to be normal.
The next one down, what's the glucose level?
So 86.
And I'm sorry, let's reference for the record the time. So 87, what time was that taken out?
87 at 9:18.
86 was taken at what time?
10:26.
What's the next one?
77 at 11:16. Do I just keep reading them all?
77, so we see a drop from 86 to 77. I'm horrible at math, but that seems to be, what, like about 40 minutes? Is that right? 10, 26?
Yeah.
What
A little bit. So between the first and the second blood sugar, that's over an hour. And then yes, maybe like 45 minutes is the next. Then the blood sugar checks get a lot more frequent. So 11:55 and 11:59. Those two were collected very close. That was 80 to 79.
Okay, let me stop you here. So the 86 to the 77, you said that even what's considered normal in a non-diabetic patient can even sometimes get into the 60s. Is that?
That's correct.
So is anything concerning to you about this 86 to a 77, or what does that say to you, that drop?
That's not a significant drop. You can see fluctuations in blood sugars. Oftentimes what we look at in blood sugars is the trend of where they are going. So like if you were to graph this, kind of what that would look like.
Okay, and I'm going to, actually, if you'll indulge me for a second, I'm going to pull up State's Exhibit 10 and put it up in this format. So the jury can look at this, and then I'm going to introduce another exhibit with you. If we could pull up for, just for the witness right now, what's been identified as State's Exhibit 176. Let me know when you see that.
Yes, I can see it.
What, do you recognize this?
Yes.
What is this?
So this is the same numbers, but graphed. So on the x-axis, this is the time of day. So you have 9, 10, 11, so hour-long increments. And then on the y-axis, these are blood sugars, so on the left. And these are just taking these numbers that you see in a spreadsheet form and putting it into graph form, so you can see approximately what time the blood sugars were collected and how they trended over time.
Is this something that you created?
It is something I created using Excel. There's no magic to this.
And you use the data taken off of State's Exhibit 10?
Correct.
Statements to admit Exhibit 176?
So Williams?
No objection.
Court received States 176, which to publish.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sorry. Sorry, just for my own reference, since I can't see that. Okay, so why is it helpful to have it graphed this way in a trend rather than on in this form in Exhibit 10?
This is how we as physicians usually look at blood sugar. So when someone's running a continuous glucose monitor or they come in with a glucose meter, these devices will form graphs like this. And so it's helpful to see a trend over time, what is happening. This tells us a lot when we have patients on insulin, how fast the rate that we see blood sugars fall, tell us information about likely, what kind of insulin was used. We gather a lot of information when we're treating patients with diabetes based on looking at these blood sugar trends over time.
All right, turning back to State's Exhibit 10, are you able to see this?
Yes.
Okay. I believe we covered, I asked you about the 77 number taken at 11:16, is that right?
Yes.
In the trend in 176, where is that seen?
So dropping down to that 76 is happening in between like 11 and noon. So that would be the 11:16 reading on this chart.
And then the next reading we see is what after that 77?
The next ones are 79. I mean, it looks like 80 on this chart, but 79.
And those were taken at, so the next one is 80.
Taken very close to noon, so 11:59.
Okay, so we have an 80 at 11:55 and a 79 at 11:59.
Mm-hmm.
That spike up from 77 back up to 80. Is that something normal in a person?
You could potentially see that fluctuation.
Why do fluctuations happen?
Fluctuations happen because there's a lot of things going into when your cells are using and pulling blood sugar out of the blood. So if someone's more active, for instance, you're going to see a little bit of drop. If someone is fasting, sometimes you can see a little bit of a drop. So there can be some normal fluctuations in blood sugars. Again, we like to typically look at trend of where things are going.
Right, so the next one down we see, I believe, a 76. You see that one?
Yes.
What time is that taken?
So 76, exactly. Sorry, back numbers. Was it, 10:25.
And sorry, is that the monitor time or the actual time?
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I just started kind of far away. It's 12:31.
And then the next one we see is 69 at 12:57. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
What does that drop from 76 to 69 say to you, if anything?
So when we look at this, technically that blood sugar in the 60s is normal, but you can see that if you were to graph this, it is trending down. So even though the blood sugars aren't quite in hypoglycemia range, they are trending in that direction based on this. You don't see a fluctuation where all of a sudden you have a blood sugar that's 69 and then it bumps back up to 75. You continue to see the next blood glucose is lower and lower.
Okay, and let's go to the next one. The next one is after 69. The next one is what?
64 at 13:19.
Which would be 119.
119, yes.
What level is 64? Is that still considered in the normal level for a non-diabetic?
Technically, for a non-diabetic, that is still considered to be a normal blood sugar. But I will say that this trend, as a physician, if I saw this, would be alarming.
Why would it be alarming?
Because the trajectory of that line is if you don't intervene, eventually you will cross that 55 spot if that trend continues.
So we talked about things that could naturally cause fluctuations in people. I think you said activity and maybe diet.
Yeah, like food status, and then activity is a big thing that will affect normal sugars.
Is this trend that we're seeing up until the 64 level, is that something that can be accounted for just based on activity and diet?
It would be unlikely if someone was really, running a marathon or something like that. Sure, you might see blood sugars kind of drift down in this fast pattern.
The next one after 64 is what?
So then there's a 43 at 143.
And
that is officially abnormal hypoglycemia.
And where do we see this in your trend graph?
So you're starting to see that at in between the hours of 1 and 2 o'clock. You will see that blood sugar graphed right above the line 40.
And you said 43 we're officially in hypoglycemic.
Yes, officially hypoglycemic.
What kind of symptoms would a person be exhibiting at blood sugar of 43?
So they would be feeling very hungry. They would be feeling very anxious. They would be feeling sweaty. Their heart would be beating very fast, and they would start to be getting confused. So maybe having slurred speech, not able to make rational decisions, maybe if they were trying to walk, they would be stumbling.
The next one that we see down is after 43 is what?
That's a 30, and that is obtained at 2 o'clock.
What physical symptoms might we see in somebody with a blood sugar of 30?
All of those same symptoms that I talked about earlier would still be persisting with 30.
You talked earlier about hypoglycemia getting to a point where people can enter comas.
Yep.
Is that possible at the levels we're at right now, 43 and 30?
Yes. Blood sugars in the 20s and 30s, we get very concerned that someone is going to have a seizure or they're going to pass into a coma.
After 30, the next one we see is what?
Then we see a 29 at 210.
What symptoms would somebody be experiencing at 29?
All of the same symptoms, starting to be very confused, not able to kind of interact appropriately as you would expect them to.
Would a coma be consistent with that, perhaps?
You could start slipping into a coma here, and this often depends on someone's background brain reserve.
Okay, explain that for us.
So if someone is already under the influence of another substance, their brain is going to take a hit from these low blood sugars much earlier than if someone didn't have those substances into their brain. So they're more likely to be more confused, slip into a coma if they have other substances on board.
What types of substances might cause that effect?
So alcohol, benzodiazepines, narcotics, or opiates. Those are some of the big ones. Obviously, if any anesthesia or something like that.
What about an antihistamine like promethazine?
That I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. The next one we see after 29 is what?
So after 29, you have a 27 at 222.
What physical symptoms are we seeing there?
Probably all the same things that I described here. These are very dangerous and low life-threatening blood sugars.
And we get the next several are kind of in the same range. We get 27. The next few jump up a little bit, 28, 32, 33. Are you seeing that?
I do see that.
What might account for that little jump?
So this is probably a counter-regulatory stress response. So the body knows that this is dangerous, that your body does not like blood sugars like this. And so it will start releasing several other hormones to combat that, including epinephrine from the adrenal glands, cortisol from the adrenal glands, and glucagon from the pancreas. These are all hormones. They're trying to mobilize food stores to try to get more glucose back into the blood. So this, what I think is probably her attempt at a counter-regulatory response to try to correct her blood sugar. But there was too much insulin on board to be able for her body to be able to fight that.
The next reading, I forget, did we get back to the 27 at the end before we get to low?
So no, we didn't, but 27 at 37.
And again, same symptoms that you described.
Yes.
The next three we see are low. Are you able to tell based on plaintiff's exhibit 10 what low means?
Yeah, so glucose meters always have a limit of how low they can actually measure. So after a certain threshold, they will just read low. It means it's so low that they can no longer detect it.
And do you have any indication about what low means for this particular glucometer?
It's less than 19.
Is that consistent with other glucometers you've worked with?
Yes, often.
The jump from 27 to at least 19 and potentially lower, what does that say to you?
This just means her body was very much struggling. There was not enough glucose in her blood to sustain life anymore.
Well, we know she was still technically alive at this point. How would you explain that?
It's a sustain. So after a certain period of time, your blood sugar will drop to nothing in the blood. But probably before that happens, the brain that's controlling your breathing doesn't have enough glucose to send that message. And so you're going to start building up carbon dioxide in your blood, and you're starting to get oxygen levels that are going to drop, which means other organs are going to start dying.
Once we get to these low measurements, which is 19 or below, what physical symptoms might we see there?
For how long this has been going on, the hours from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, someone is going to be in a comatose-like state with blood sugars like this for that sustained period of time. Now, if someone has a low blood sugar into 27, we fix it within 15 minutes, they're going to start feeling a lot better. But this is a long time to have low blood sugars.
We talked before about the process by which somebody tests blood sugar using a glucometer that is a prick. Remember that?
Yes.
I believe you started talking about around, and correct me if I'm wrong, around 43 is where we may start seeing symptoms of confusion, slurred speech, inability to move around as well.
Yes. Yes.
At what point would you expect in this chart someone to be unable to physically do the process of testing their own blood sugar? If you're able to say.
Yeah. That drop, when it drops from 43 down to 30, anytime after that, it would be incredibly hard for someone to test their own blood sugar. And I say that because of the time of how long there was already a low blood sugar in the 40s and how much time had passed, that the body is losing its reserve to continue to check. But people are very confused. When we have patients who have a bad hypoglycemic event, sometimes they actually require third-party interventions. They're so confused, they can't even drink the juice anymore. So they have to have people sometimes give them glucagon shots or something to go up their nose because they are so confused they can actually no longer correct the low blood sugar themselves.
Are you aware of, I guess, whether Kacee was eventually taken to the hospital?
Yes, I know that she was taken to the hospital. I did review those records.
Are you aware of what her blood sugar level was when either EMS or when she was taken to the hospital?
Yes, so from what I recall, when EMS came and they tried to do a blood sugar, it was too low to read. And so they administered her some dextrose. Then I believe when she got to the hospital, her blood sugar was 14 on a serum blood sugar check. And this was after she had already been given dextrose by EMS. Dextrose is a form of sugar, of glucose in a medical, usually there's different concentrations, but it's usually in sterile water, called D5, but it's dextrose water.
A blood sugar level of 14, is that something that you would expect somebody to come back from?
Not if it had been sustained for a very long period of time, so hours.
You mentioned before that there's short-acting and long-acting insulin.
Yes.
Can you briefly describe those?
Yeah, so long-acting insulin is insulin that when it gets injected into the skin, it forms these microparticles based on pH changes where it will slowly be reabsorbed into the body. So it's meant to last over 24 hours. So for example, just gonna pick this number because it's easy math. If someone injects 24 units of a long-acting or basal insulin, that insulin breaks down at a rate of 1 unit per hour. So you have a blob of insulin sitting under the skin, and it releases 1 unit into the body per hour. It's designed to last a long time. And that's for our patients with type 1 diabetes. Everyone's body always needs a background small amount of insulin to help with cell metabolism.
What is short-acting insulin?
So short-acting insulin is designed to be absorbed by the body much faster. So usually it's absorbed within 4 to 5 hours at reasonable doses. Now that changes if you give a big dose of short-acting all at once. It changes the volume of fluid under the skin. Your body can't absorb all of that in the normal 4 to 5 hours. It takes longer for it to process.
Are you aware of how long Kacee was attempting to be treated at the hospital?
Yes, I have to go back and look at the dates, but if I remember correctly, it was something around 3 days or so.
Are you aware of what medical interventions were? You already mentioned dextrose being given at least once. Are you aware of what medical interventions given during that time at the hospital?
Yeah, so they were giving her a lot of what we call AMSA D50, which is 25 grams of sugar directed into her blood to try to bring up her blood sugars. But then they noticed every time they did that, blood sugars might stay high for a little bit and they would drop rapidly. So then they started a drip, which just means that someone is constantly getting an infusion into their veins. And so she started on a D10 drip. Even with that, she was still requiring D5 pushes or these extra glucose to try to bring up her blood sugar. So then the medical staff then increased the concentration of the D5 drip. They moved to a D20 drip, so 20% dextrose to try to keep her blood sugar stable. All this to say is she got a lot of glucose by the medical team trying to stabilize her blood sugars, which tells me that she received a large dose of subcutaneous insulin. So insulin that was injected into the skin.
And let me stop you there. You say large dose. What does that mean for a person that's not diabetic?
So the pharmacokinetics of this, if you inject more than 0.4 units of insulin per kilogram of body weight, it will change, how to describe this? It changes how long the insulin lasts in the body. And so for her, when I looked at her body weight in the past, it's roughly about 38 units of insulin. So anything greater than that or a higher amount, you're going to expect her body's going to take longer to metabolize that insulin. It's going to take, as I said, days to metabolize that bolus of insulin under the skin.
And you said anything greater than 38 units would have this effect?
Yes, and that's based on textbook kind of calculations of insulin per kilogram.
You mentioned that part of your conclusion that she received a large dose of insulin and that it was administered subcutaneously. You may have already described that, but tell us again what that means.
So if we inject insulin into the vein, that's insulin directly into the bloodstream, that is, insulin is rapidly cleared within 5 to 7 minutes of being administered into a blood vessel. But if you inject it into the skin, then that insulin slowly has to break down. Those insulin particles have to move to a vessel to be distributed to the rest of the body. And so that's where different insulins, their onset of action change. It's because how they're designed to break down underneath the skin. If you inject any insulin into a blood vessel, it doesn't matter if it's long-acting, short-acting, regular insulin, it all has the same properties. It's cleared from that blood vessel within 5 to 7 minutes.
Is that true even if given a huge amount?
Yes, even if given a huge amount, you're going to see a rapid drop in blood sugars because that insulin is delivered directly into a vein. So when people get admitted for diabetic ketoacidosis, this is something where patients with type 1 can get really high blood sugar. We administer insulin drips, which they are directly insulin into the vein, where the nurses can titrate the insulin levels based on the blood sugar response. And because you see blood sugars change really quickly in the blood, you can be more precise with the amount of insulin that's being administered. If you administer insulin into the skin, you don't have as much control of how that insulin gets distributed to the body because you're relying on the body's natural, like the skin and the pH in the skin for that insulin to be absorbed and then go into the blood vessels, if that makes sense.
Are you aware of whether Kacee Terry had a port?
Yes, I do know that she had a port.
Briefly describe what a port is.
So a port is it's a kind of a catheter that goes underneath the skin directly into a major blood vessel. So when patients need usually we do this for often for chemotherapy. If patients are expected to need to be stuck a lot, they can, if you do too many kind of IVs into peripheral veins, those veins can start to get damaged and they can kind of blow. And so then it's difficult to get people to have access. So often if we anticipate someone's going to need a lot of injections, we will put in a port. So that's something that goes into one of your bigger blood vessels, more in your central body.
Part of your conclusion was that Kacee was administered somehow subcutaneous insulin. How do you know that this was not given through the port?
Because with the port, if the insulin was injected into a port, it would have gone directly into a blood vessel. And so you would have seen that drop within 5 to 7 minutes. So looking at that graph, which has disappeared.
Sorry, can we put back up Exhibit 176?
So based on this, it is based on the rate of change of blood sugars, it is theoretically possible that insulin could have been administered via a port at 119, when you see that rapid drop of a blood sugar that's in the 60s straight down into the 30s, that could be subcutaneous insulin, that could be insulin via port. That's fast. I can't tell you at that particular moment, I could not exclude that it was not put into a port there, but I do know that insulin was not put into the port at 9:20 in the morning or 9:18 in the morning.
And how are you able to make that conclusion?
Because the two blood sugars, that line is pretty flat. I do not see any change in blood sugars at 9:20. So if that was insulin via port, you would have seen rapid blood sugars drop in that hour.
What would you expect to see if given subcutaneously around 9:18? And let's start with if given short-acting insulin around 9:18, what would you expect?
Yeah, so short-acting insulin has an onset time of 15 to 30 minutes. So when you look at this graph, 15 to 30 minutes is happening, and you don't see a blood sugar drop as you'd expect. So at 9:18, you would expect within 15 to 30 minutes, so before 10 o'clock, blood sugar would have started to drop based on the onset time of short-acting insulin.
What about this drop from 86 to 77 between 10:26 and 11:16? Are you able to tell anything
Sorry,
about that?
can you repeat the question? Where can you look?
Sorry, the drop between 86 to 77, the second and the third.
Sure. That could be normal fluctuations in blood sugar. It's hard to exclude. There could have been a small amount of insulin injected at that time. It's hard because you do see a change there. it's not a huge change. So again, it's hard to say, is this just physiologic variation, or was there a small amount of insulin given at that time?
And again, are you able to conclude whether, if a small amount of insulin is given at that time, are you able to conclude whether that would be subcutaneous or through a port?
Through those times, let me just look at it again, 10:20. If there was anything given into a port at 10:26, I mean, you could have seen, you would see a drop in 5 to 7 minutes. But because it wasn't a huge drop and you see a rebound when you get close to the noon hour, if there was insulin through a port, there it was a teeny tiny amount, if anything.
Okay, and at some point, you say you become very confident that the insulin could not have been given through a port. Where do we see that?
I know insulin did not have been given through a port at the beginning of the mornings of this chart. So like at 9, I know like the insulin was not given via a port there, because the next blood sugar at 10:26 is about the same as the blood sugar that was an hour. So if there was insulin given, significant amount of insulin given in a port that caused hypoglycemia, that blood sugar should be lower based on the onset of action of insulin delivered directly into a vein. Subcutaneous insulin definitely has different properties.
Okay, let's talk about that. What, if any, conclusions are you able to make about timing of when subcutaneous insulin may have been administered?
So if we're talking about Novolog, which is a short-acting insulin, and my understanding that's the insulin that was found on the scene, so that has an onset time of 15 to 30 minutes. So when you look at these drops, and I look at it as an endocrinologist who's used to looking at blood sugar trends, to me, it looks like short-acting insulin was administered probably around 12 to 12:30 to cause that significant decline that we see in the trend in the graph.
And again, are you able to tell anything about the amount?
I can't tell anything about the amount based on this particular graph. I just can tell you it was a lot of insulin based on the rest of her trajectory of her hospital stay.
Okay, so is it fair to say that Kacee could have received multiple injections throughout the day?
That is possible.
Is it fair to say that she could have received one large injection, which you said would be anything over 38 units for her body type at one point in time?
Yes. So based on this, I cannot exactly say how many injections were given, how much was given at each time. I just know that during this day, she was given a large amount of subcutaneous insulin.
How many units, insulin's measured in units, is that fair?
Yes.
How many units are in a vial?
So there are 100 units per ml of insulin, and their vials typically come in 10 mLs. So there's 1,000 units per vial.
Okay, so again, I'm bad at math. So would 1 milliliter equal 100 units?
Yes.
What would you expect 100 units to do in a non-diabetic patient, or not patient, but person of Kacee's?
It would cause significant life-threatening hypoglycemia.
We talked about kind of the treatment or reversible window or optimal, I don't know, I'm putting words in your mouth. I believe you said 15 minutes. If somebody's pretty low, we can reverse it.
Sure.
At what point does it become difficult, if not impossible, to reverse?
So again, everyone's brain is a little different with this, but for most people, when you're getting into the hours of prolonged hypoglycemia that is this profound, that is this low, I'm not talking about like mild hypoglycemia, but this low, that's when you're starting to get irreversible brain damage from hypoxia.
And once we're getting into the low readings, be it below 19.
Yeah, that's considered to be very, very low.
Would you expect a trained nurse to know this?
Yes.
If someone's getting these low readings, meaning that their glucose is in the teens, is that a medical emergency?
It is a medical emergency.
Is it the kind of event where even minutes may matter?
Yes.
Would you expect a nurse to know this?
Yes.
Could Kacee have potentially survived if given medical care at some point in this graph?
Yes.
Are you comfortable saying at what point?
The first time intervention, could have certainly saved her life is when you have that true hypoglycemia in the 40s. If that was corrected, that would have saved her life.
So that's at 143?
I would say until you're starting to get into the hours where you're looking at 2 to 3, 3 to 4, that's again when you're going to start getting irreversible brain damage. Now you still might be able to save someone's life, but they might have cognitive deficits.
Is this trend, or these results that we're seeing with blood sugar, could that be the result of any kind of natural body process or other disease?
There's only 2 things that cause prolonged hypoglycemia in a hospital requiring D10 and D20 drips. One is profound insulin overdose. The second thing is something called an insulinoma, which is a 1 in a million event where someone has a tumor in their pancreas that produces insulin. But we know that she did not have a tumor in her pancreas based on autopsy reports, which leaves insulin overdose.
Sorry, I'm just going over my notes. In your professional medical opinion, was hypoglycemia a substantial factor in the cause of Kacee's death?
Yes.
In your opinion, medical and professional opinion, was the death of Kacee the natural and probable consequence of severe hypoglycemia left untreated?
Yes.
I think you have nothing further. We can take down Exhibit 176.
Mr. Williams.
Stop giving me this.
Good morning, Dr. Sundwall.
Hi, good morning.
Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you.
We were able to do one consultation about a month ago or so, I think, right?
Correct.
Fair enough. I'll let you know.
Sorry.
You're pushing through some of the-
If you need more time.
I think I can make it. All right. When did the state first reach out to you to be an expert witness in this case?
The exact date, I do not recall that.
Do you recall the month?
I don't actually. It's,
Taking notes or anything about the state? 2 months
I don't
ago?
recall. Well, I don't have my notes in front of me. I'd have to go back and look. I'd have to look. It's been a while.
2 months?
No, it's been longer than 2 months.
3 months?
It's been longer than 3 months.
After March 20th of 2024, that's for sure, right? Or 2025. It was after March 20th of 2025. It was after a year ago, right?
Sure. I mean, do you have the dates? You can tell me.
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
I have no idea when they came to talk to you.
Okay.
Right,
It's been a while.
When you had said you started up, you've never been an expert witness, right? Not in trial.
Not in trial.
You've never been involved in, excuse me, evaluating, in consultation with a criminal case, right?
No, not with a criminal case. Only malpractice cases.
You've been an expert witness, I think, when we talked a couple times, like with medical malpractice, you did it once, right?
Twice, and then I also helped the state on a doppel complaint.
On state licensing.
Yes, state licensing. Yes.
So DOPL is the special licensing board that decides whether or not someone is to continue to be a nurse, right?
Correct. Or a doctor.
Did you know in this case that Meggan Sundwall was still a nurse on March 20th, 2025, licensed?
I did know that she was a nurse.
You know she was still licensed on March 20th, 2025?
I did not, but I do now.
Okay. So with that, we've got some work with civil lawyers. We've got some work, one case with DOPL, right?
Correct.
And that is the sum total of expert consultation that you've been involved in. Is that fair?
Correct.
So, and you don't know when the state came to you. Certainly, it was within the last, can we say 6 months?
Yes. If you give me my cell phone, I could. I could look to find the emails if the state is really important to you.
Well, let me, I don't know what's important to you. I'm not going to make decisions ultimately in this case. I'm just trying to get information, but let me put it in a different context. You started right out by talking about what you were given to review to reach conclusions in this case, right?
Correct.
And you were specifically asked if you consulted with other people, right? Other experts, right? Yes?
Yes.
And you didn't. You didn't reach out and consult with other experts, is what you said, right?
No, I did not say that.
Okay. I missed it. Who did you consult with?
You asked me this when we had our meeting, who I consulted with. It wasn't specifically about this case, but I did reach out to someone I trained with at the University of Colorado, Dr. Cecilia Lewong, and I did ask her, with short-acting insulin overdoses, how long in her experience she had seen people have hypoglycemia in the hospital, and her answer was days, and I did tell you that.
Well, I'm not
We had our
going
meeting.
I'm not going to need to go back to our meeting. We're going to talk about what you know now, so I just wanted to establish what you did. Did you know at the time that you started working with the state that they'd already been working with an expert witness named Dr. Uribe?
I did not know that at the time that they reached out to me.
So they've never told you that they worked since March, as early as March 3rd, 2025, with an expert on the subjects that included testifying about the interaction between insulin and other substances identified in the victim's autopsy, cases involving insulin overdose, how they typically present, and how those cases compare to this case. The state never told you that they had been working with Dr. Paul Uribe since March 3rd, 2025?
They did not.
All right. So I take it that, well, they didn't tell you, you never sought any information or advice or any consultation with Dr. Uribe.
Right. I mean, I consider myself to be an expert in hypoglycemia.
I understand. I'm not going to challenge your expertise.
Okay,
We're going to talk about what the state is using it for. You did review some earlier testimony from Diane Allred in this case, right?
Will you please refresh my memory?
She's the emergency doctor who handled the treatment of Kacee Terry in the hospital.
I believe I reviewed the testimony from the medical examiner and from the primary care physician.
I'm going to check on that, I guess,
Okay.
because I don't think, well, the testimony from the primary care physician.
From the primary care physician, yeah.
And then, so that's Dr. Mesto. Let me just tell you who it is.
Okay.
And then, I'm sorry, who else did you review testimony from?
From the medical examiner.
Dr. Miriam. I'm gonna say.
Yes.
So you had some prior testimony that was given, but you didn't talk to those people, right?
Correct. I did not talk to them. I just reviewed the transcripts.
Did you watch any of their testimony at this trial?
I did not.
So you haven't seen what their conclusions were about the insulin and whether they could reach any conclusions
I have not.
from their data as to these questions about what kinds or what times and things like that apply to the administration of exogenous insulin in this case, right?
I have not heard their conclusions.
Can we agree in general that, so dealing with glucose levels and the interaction with insulin, blood sugar levels, things like that, there's a lot of variables in assessing that data, right?
Yes.
Some people, food, consumption of food and what kind of food, approximate to introduction of insulin could be relevant, right?
Sure.
The medical history of someone, right?
Of course.
Like, for instance, you know since you read the testimony previously of Dr. Mastiller that she was noted by him in his chart to be suffered from hypoglycemia.
Yes, I did that.
So we got issues with hypoglycemia with Kacee. We know that, right?
Yes, I believe he said that she was reporting some issues with hypoglycemia and that there was a referral placed to endocrinology, but that consultation hadn't taken place.
Okay, Kacee didn't know, but Dr. Mastiller indicated in his testimony specifically that she suffered from hypoglycemia.
Objection to state's testimony.
Well,
I'll sustain that.
that's fair. Let's get really specific and careful. Do you remember from his testimony that she said she was hypoglycemic? Do you remember that?
Not specifically, but if you want me to read
I
it.
don't want anyone suggesting I'm not being fair. You read Dr. Mastiller's testimony. I don't to come here as a state's expert witness, right?
Yes.
Correct. I highlighted the bottom of the transcript of his testimony. What he said.
Yes, so she did receive, she was hypoglycemic.
Okay. So Dr. Mastella had reported hypoglycemia in someone. It can be another tricky factor.
Sure.
And all these tricky factors can affect what any particular dose of exogenous insulin might have done in the case, right?
Yeah, if someone's already prone to hypoglycemia and you give them exogenous insulin, is going to make that even worse.
So it will also mean somebody who could have various shifts in their blood sugar levels for various reasons, right? Isn't that what people suffering from means?
Yeah, so I mean, I can elaborate if you would like me to. She had a history of gastric bypass, and sometimes patients with gastric bypass can have what we call reactive hypoglycemia after they eat something that's really high in carbohydrates. Sometimes their blood sugars can drop after they eat. Typically, they are not severe drops. They are easily corrected with food.
If somebody wants to.
Well, you would have those counter-regulatory responses. So you'd have epinephrine, cortisol, and glucagon that your body would naturally make whether you wanted it to or not to try to correct that low blood sugar.
And you can try to correct it, for instance, by
Drinking juice, or yeah, eating candy.
Eat candy. Like, by the way, you talked about you hadn't been given police reports and things like that on this case, right?
That's correct, I'm not.
Take a break. Have a drink of water. Prosecutor asked you about DNRs and those sorts of things.
Sure.
I mean, you knew, didn't you, or did you, that this whole case is about, a whole text exchange exists in this case about this being a circumstance where the courts were involved in the notion that Kacee Terry was going to commit suicide by introduction of exogenous insulin. Did you know that?
I did hear from the prosecutors that that theory was involved.
Okay, so that when they go over there during this day with these charts, and you can keep that please. This data that we were talking about, we'll talk about a little bit more, was an event that the text messages showed, at least according to those messages, Kacee Terry had communicated and planned with Meggan Sundwall to commit suicide, for Kacee to commit suicide, right?
I haven't seen these text messages, or I think you're telling me this. Yes.
No, I'm not telling you anything. I'm not allowed to testify.
Okay. I have not seen. I have not personally seen this exchange of text messages between Meggan and Kacee. If you would like me to review them here, I'm happy to do that for you.
We seen that. What I want to ask you is, did you know that the event that this information is related to was set up, at least in evidence of the case, as a suicide event?
Well, I do know.
Okay. Well, then let's talk about what you concluded with some of this data. You have to be right up here. Is it okay to proceed?
Yes.
Yes. Right, you said normal blood sugar was like 80, 120, right? Yes.
Yes.
This 9:18 hour in the morning is the first data you were able to get from this chart course, right?
Yep.
Now at that time, she is just on the low normal 87, right?
Yes. So that's typically what blood sugars are, 80 to 120. But you can have blood sugars in the 60s and 70s, and we still consider them normal. Remember, the definition of hypoglycemia is less than 55.
Right. Just going with what you said. You said you started off.
Yes. In general, most blood sugars do sit in the 80s and 120s.
In general, she was at the low end of that, right? 87.
Yes. Normal blood sugar.
What do you know about what blood sugar was before 9:18?
I don't know anything about what her blood sugar was before 9:18.
We have this drop of, I don't know, I can't do that either, but there's this time throughout these first couple hours where, let's see, 45 minutes, she goes from that 86 to 77 drop, right? So and back to 80?
Yep. And she had about a 20 or so point drop between noon and 1. That's roughly, she was around 80.
Right, so.
And then dropped to
I
69.
see, I'm going to refer certain sections, so that's okay. She could have taken long-acting insulin before 9:18 that could possibly be responsible for the drop to 77, right?
So long-acting insulin typically takes 1 to 2 hours to take into effect. So if you had an injection, you are going to start seeing some blood sugars drop in the 1 to 2 hours.
1 to 2 hours is that time period when we started these numbers to 77, right?
Yeah.
So according to this, it's certainly possible and consistent information with Kacee Terry having taken some insulin before 9:18. Could happen, right?
It could have.
I'm going to stop you there so I can see question and answer. Now, your conclusions also are that, let me get to the final one, that it's hard to know whether or not this data and your conclusions from it came from multiple doses of short-acting, right? That could have been.
It could have been multiple doses of short-acting.
Including a large dose. That could be what this data shows you, right?
You could have a larger dose, yes.
So, and it all could be combinative. It can all be combined with some
Sure.
long-acting.
Yeah, I cannot exclude the possibility that long-acting was also given. Long-acting, when it drives down blood sugars, the slope is usually a consistent slope over 24 hours.
So, like you said, the body corrects on, right? Rebounds a bit. And
It can, yeah, you can have a rebound a bit, but the overall trajectory of the slope, you can have the points fluctuate a little bit, but the trend in general stays about the same. So that's, yeah, because of how long-acting breaks down and gets absorbed into the body.
So you could be trending on it, and then you could take short-acting or something that probably causes a more precipitous drop, right?
Yeah.
And if you've got the long-acting, then the short-acting is going to even be cumulative with that. It's going to increase the likelihood of drop, right?
It will certainly increase the drop. You have a 40-point drop in 1 hour.
I'm asking in general, if I've got long-acting in me, maybe once, maybe twice injected, and slowing down, stopping my blood sugar, right?
Yeah, right, yep.
And then I take some fast-acting, that's going to combine with the long-acting and produce a dramatic effect, right?
Sure, yeah.
So by the same token, if I've already got the long-acting a little bit, that drastic impact could happen with even a little less of the short-acting, because I've got them both in me now.
Yes, sure. Yep.
Going to your brow. In comparison to the chart, then, we have these features where, of course, we see this drop ultimately at 2 o'clock p.m., the reading of that 30, right?
Yes.
And you indicate at that point in time, given the symptoms of someone who has a blood sugar level at that level, they're probably going to cause.
or close to. They are certainly feeling it because that is a fast drop for someone in 1 hour.
And fair enough. Let's say, I guess we could be, you say, it depends, there could be some various factors that you be dizzy, might not be some of the words and things, might not be unconscious.
Yeah, so when that's,
Might be shaky.
yeah, when their brain doesn't have enough glucose, yeah, the first things would be slurring speech, confusion, stumbling when they're walking. And those symptoms would progress.
Right. It's about conscious.
Yeah, it would be conscious for a period of time.
You're able to do some basic tasks. Could be, right?
Yeah, just like, how people are intoxicated can do certain things, but not well.
Right. And you can set yourself with a syringe, push longer. Right?
Yes, if there was insulin already in the syringe drawn up,
Did you have a text message where she was saying she was going to preload insulin in syringes?
I did not know that.
Anyway, throughout these 30s, then even in the course of this drop, when you're dropped, it stops at 2 o'clock. Actually, these are the 30s all the way to 4 o'clock, right? Between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock, she's fluctuating at 27:30, I think it is.
But very dangerously low. Yes,
Dangerously low.
dangerously low.
Certainly dangerously low, but capable of saving yourself with me.
I would question that statement.
But I thought the answer, here's a 33 that.
But this is now an hour to hour and a half later of prolonged hypoglycemia. That is different than when you hit someone if they have low in the first 5 minutes of hypoglycemia. Now we're talking about hours.
Everything that happened after 2 o'clock, prior to 2 o'clock, let's see if we can get some agreement on that, because I was talking about 30. Everything prior to roughly 3 o'clock is an event that is consistent with Kacee Terry doing it to herself with a needle, right?
I can't tell you that based on these data alone. I don't know based on these data who was the person who, just based on these numbers, who pushed the syringe.
Like just like Annie said.
Right, just before 2 o'clock, I can tell you after that person is going to be comatose and they're not checking their blood sugars.
You're
After
saying
2
as soon as they go unconscious, I don't know if it's a medical degree, but they're not able to inject into themselves as they're unconscious, right?
Correct. They're not able to check their blood sugar when they're unconscious.
So somewhere where she loses consciousness, in these 30, 29, 27, 28, 32, 33, 27 numbers, somewhere in there, where she clearly loses consciousness, probably early in there, right?
Probably.
Everything before that, she could have done whatever happened in terms of exogenous insulin going into her blood, right?
She could have.
Nothing in the evidence that you've seen, including the medical records and everything else in this case that you've reviewed, there is no way to conclude that anything was administered into her after she lost consciousness. Agreed?
Agreed.
That's all I have.
Yes, I'll be super quick. Mr. Williams asked you if you consulted with other experts in this case, and you referenced somebody in your field that you did talk to. Did you consult with other potential experts associated with this case?
No.
If there was Mr. Williams referenced Dr. Uribe, I'll represent to you that he's a medical examiner. Okay, so would you have reason to consult with a medical examiner in this case?
No.
You don't need any opinion of a medical examiner to reach your conclusions here?
Correct. I consider myself to be an expert in hypoglycemia, so I did not need to reach out to someone of a different specialty to help formulate my opinions.
Mr. Williams, and we'll see if you remember this because it's now been a few minutes, but he was talking to you about potentially insulin being given somehow to Kacee before 9:18. You had more to say, and Mr. Williams cut you off. Do you happen to remember what more you had to say?
Only long-acting insulin, which takes like 1 to 2 hours to start to see the onset. There, you can start to, like he said, from that drop from like the 80s into the 70s. Could that have been long-acting insulin that was given, an hour or 2 hours before? And I think you could say yes, that's possible. But then the following curves are just not consistent with just long-acting insulin. So just long-acting insulin, how it breaks down, it would drag the blood sugar down slowly. It would be not a very steep slope of that curve, it would be more of a gradual. So when I look at this pattern, what is always striking to me is how that slope changes a little bit after 1 p.m. You can see that dramatic drop. So to me, that is most suggestive of short-acting insulin being administered around that time.
And that time would be around 1 to 2.
Like 15 to 30 minutes before you start seeing, so that one at 69 or 70, like at 12:30. Now, maybe there's a smaller dose of short-acting insulin given before then, because you start to see the trend at noon, you start seeing blood sugar drop, but then the slope dramatically changes. So to me, that means that a circumstance changed. This is most likely, when I look at graphs like this, again, my experience is most likely short-acting insulin causing that rapid drop of 40 points.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe on cross, I heard you testify that around after 2 p.m., it would be difficult or impossible for Kacee to check her own blood sugar.
Yes, this is someone who's not used to having low blood sugars. The brain is not used to that, and for the longer it goes without fuel, you cannot function normally. You drop into a coma and you cannot do your activities of daily living anymore.
So checking sugars would be included in that?
Correct.
Also drawing up a syringe with any substance would be included in that?
That would be incredibly hard. To draw up a syringe of insulin, you have to tip the vial upside down, you have to get the needle on the syringe, you have to insert it, you have to pull back, you have to take it out, make sure you didn't drop air, which I've had patients do, and then you would have to inject yourself.
Sorry, but you said drop air. What does that mean?
Drop air. So if you, when you hold a vial under and you put a needle in, if you put in the needle too high, there's air at the top, and people will just drop air. So you have to be able to look precisely and hit a small rubber stopper to get that needle through the vial and make sure the needle is in the fluid, and then pull back to pull out the fluid from the vial.
And it's consistent with your opinion that after about 2 p.m., Kacee would not have been able to do that process herself. Correct. I have nothing further.
So a shaky person getting real low blood pressure around 2, blood sugar around 2, et cetera, make it hard to really like shake, right?
Yeah, it's like the adrenaline release, sympathetic nervous system, you do start to feel very trembly.
Hard to do something that, like, draw a needle back, put it into a vial, draw it back, load your needle, right?
Yeah.
So I have to like touch it 14 times to make it happen, right? Right?
Sure.
And once again, if they're long lasting on board, You have a general trend down, as we see on this graph, till about just after 1, right?
Correct.
And you've got insulin in your blood. It might have been there even before 9:38. Then you add some. You have the combination effect. It's going to be more drastic, right?
Yes, but I want to be clear. The beginning of this graph doesn't necessarily mean it's long-acting insulin. This is just like it.
I'm here. My dog is being annoying because they're here hooking up the cameras. So if I don't come back or if I stay quiet for a while, you know why. Okay. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
It could have been short-acting insulin as well before then. But
The point is that there's insulin in here doing something. This drastic drop is going to be more pronounced with less administered at 2. Can we agree on that? I've got exogenous insulin going to go in me. I've already got it maybe short, maybe long. I've already got insulin in me. It's going to take less to make me drop quickly than if I had no insulin in me. Is that fair to say? Because the combination?
yeah, the combination, any type of insulin, if I'm combination, it can cause a big drop.
Okay. So that could really rev up something that's already going on. Let's finish this. This slide at the bottom, you talked about anoxia. Right?
Yes.
Anoxia is causing, that's hypoxia.
Correct.
That's why the brain's not really getting damaged, right?
Correct.
And you talked about time, and the longer that goes on, the less ability to recover.
Correct.
These low,
Irreversible brain damage.
and these low levels, we don't know what they are. They're under 20 or how.
They're under 19, yeah. So
Could be 0, could
could be 10, could be 13, could be 14.
in that circumstance, just is not compatible with the brain being able to function for very long, right?
Correct.
I mean, especially not going to recover after 3 hours at that level, right?
It'd be very unlikely.
Can I just ask one redirect? In the graph that we're seeing, and including exhibit 10, the levels up until about 12:31 they're still in normal range, correct?
Yes.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Can this witness be released? Force that down.
Yes, I'm saying.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Counsel, please approach. This includes no individual research on the parties, attorneys, or claims. Have a good lunch.
Yeah, I had to rewind because I don't know if they're done for the day or they can't be done for the day because it's only about 3 hours in and they only went for 5. So maybe lunch.
Ladies and gentlemen, the jury, we're now going to take our lunch break. You're going to get an hour and a half today. So we're going to have you come back, let's say 1:40. My math is correct. 1:40. In the meantime, you are admonished by the court that it is your duty not to converse among yourselves or to converse with any other person on any subject of the trial. It is your duty not to form or express an opinion thereon until the case is finally submitted to you. This includes no individual research on the parties, attorneys, or claims. Have a good lunch.
All right, I'm going to mute this, all right? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, y'all.
You see it? We'll come back after lunch.
I'm sorry, just like,
All right. We'll come back after break.
Presumption the state has rested, or will have rested. Timing is such that it's incumbent upon me to move the court, Your Honor, to dismiss the charges in this case. It's not having been met and not, in this trial having not so far provided sufficient evidence for the government to prevail on the 2 counts beyond a reasonable doubt. And on the standard of no reasonable jury could reach the verdict of guilty on the evidence before the court.
Any response?
Yes, Judge. That being the standard, as the court knows, there is sufficient evidence that can be submitted to a jury on both counts. I'll start with count 2, obstructing justice. That one seems pretty clear. The defendant deleted at least 283 messages dealing with insulin, suicide, and insurance from her phone. The evidence was, at least in part, that there's indication that she began those deletions on, or at least did some of those deletions on, I believe, August 17th, after she had talked with police, after she was aware that an investigation was underway. And certainly the theme and topics of those deletions have to do with the crime at hand. Turning to aggravated murder, there's also sufficient evidence to submit it to a jury. Meggan Sundwall, who we have here, the combination of all of the forms of evidence, primarily the text messages, do demonstrate that she intentionally or knowingly caused the death of another individual. We know that Kacee Terry died. We know she died by insulin overdose. And the intentionally or knowingly, the texts more than demonstrate sufficient enough to go back to a jury that Meggan intended to come and help her. Multiple texts say that she would do it, that she would keep administering insulin after Kacee was either passed out or asleep to make sure that she kept her sugars low. the evidence supports that the defendant certainly continued to test Kacee's blood sugar to continue to ensure that it continued dropping after the point where Kacee would have been unconscious. And the evidence supports both aggravating factors. There's evidence that the defendant was told by Kacee that she was the beneficiary of a $1 million life insurance policy. There's evidence that supports that Meggan believed that, and that was the reason. There are text messages showing her escalating financial desperation to Kacee. She even questions Kacee about the legitimacy of the policy, and Kacee is able to give her information that sounds credible enough that the defendant actually had a policy number and called the insurance company days after Kacee's death to follow up on that policy. The second aggravator is that a homicide was committed by means of administration of a poison or any lethal substance, or of any substance administered in a lethal amount, dosage, or quantity. Again, the evidence is pretty clear that the cause of death here is exogenous insulin overdose. We heard testimony from multiple people, but most recently Dr. DeSalvo that said that 100 units, certainly anything over 38 units would be lethal to Kacee, and the medical examiner and the toxicologist evidence were consistent that insulin, although other substances may have been on board, they were in therapeutic amounts and would not have on their own been the cause, and insulin overdose is what we're looking at here as the cause. And so, and then I wanted to address with Your Honor, I know it was originally charged as domestic violence tagged offenses, although there is evidence that Ms. Sundwall and Kacee lived together at a certain point, and I think the evidence would meet that requirement. The state has determined that there's really nothing to gain from that domestic violence tag, and so that's not something that we're going to be seeking to be proven to the jury. So we can make that clear, and that's not going to be something that the jury will have to be instructed upon.
Are you intending on filing an amended information, or do we not need an amended information? You're just not arguing that portion?
We're just going to argue that. We're happy to file an amended information procedurally if that's what the court prefers, but I think we have agreed that we're not going to seek that tag, and the jury doesn't need to be instructed on that.
Okay, and that's your understanding, Mr. Williams?
I know, but I appreciate that. I think there's ways for us to work it out either way. Amended information, we can talk about that.
Okay.
It is not a time that I seek to counterpoint to this extraordinarily difficult hurdle to overcome, and Your Honor gets to use all the evidence that has been induced at trial at this point. So I'm not even seeking a detailed explanation for your ruling. I'll submit.
Thank you. This matter comes before the court on defendant's motion for directed verdict. The court has had a chance to has had a chance to listen to all the testimony and the scene exhibits that have been received into evidence. I will cite to State versus Montoya, found in 2004 UT 5, specifically paragraph 29. The evidence is to be viewed in the light most favorable to the state. When reviewing a directed verdict, the court is not free to weigh the evidence and thus invade the province of the jury, whose prerogative it is to judge the facts. Upon reviewing the evidence and all inferences that can be reasonably drawn from it, this court does conclude that some evidence exists which a reasonable jury could find that the elements of the crime charge have been proven beyond reasonable doubt. Therefore, the court will deny defendant's motion for a directed verdict. When the jury comes back in, I can let them know that the state has rested. That is on the record, so I think we're covered. What's the plan for the rest of the day?
So the hope is that Your Honor would accommodate a scheduling for defendant present evidence tomorrow. I expect that we would be completely by the end of the day, even sufficiently advanced at the end of the day for the state to determine whether they think it's rebuttal. These are experts, so they don't notice what they're about, what they're going to say. It's not for me to say whether they'll have rebuttal, but I want to point out that I believe it'd be concluding early enough that if there's rebuttal, that could be accommodated. It would be my request if we, however, do not contemplate trying to close the case tomorrow. We already talked about the imprudence of sending a jury tired from even part of the day to begin to deliberate. So I'm hoping that the court will accommodate the closing of the case on Monday.
I think that will work.
That's fine with the state, and hopefully, we've freed up the Monday, and then the jury has until Tuesday. If it's a long deliberation, they'll have plenty of time.
Thank you both for talking about this.
Oh, I have one other thing. I prefer to stop. I thank you, but of course, our next witness comes from Logan. Is the court and everybody comfortable giving him an extra half an hour starting at 9 tomorrow?
Of course. Yeah, we can start at 9. So are we good to have Cole let the jury know their excuse for the day? They're still under the admonition. Do we want to bring them back in and let them know? Would either of you prefer that, or are you okay with Cole telling they're excused for the day and to come back at 9?
I'm fine either way. I know that there has been maybe potential issues with the admonition, but I think they have heard it enough at this point that they should be aware.
Let's bring them in so I can just talk to them for a second. I think it's clear. Oh, and before we do that, Cole, I have some jury instructions. They're a work in progress. We're going to talk about them all. I want you to look at them, and you guys to talk about them, and then we'll go from there. So there's multiple parts to them for various reasons, and some you might get, some you might say, what is this? And that's okay. By no means are they final. They're proposals at this point in time. 2, we'll get those to you. Can you do that, Jalen? Can you email to them? That would be helpful. So just so you'll have them
this evening and tomorrow to look at, and we'll talk about it. Hopefully that will be helpful.
We're not-
For you.
we're discussing
And
something.
you guys are free to stipulate any specific instructions for me to consider that I'll look at if you think it's better than what we have, and we'll all talk about the benefits of it before we come up with our final instructions.
That works, and now I think we have plenty of time for us to consult together and be on the same page with that.
Wonderful. All right, let's bring the jury in. It's just for a moment.
All right, the jury.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, jury, welcome back from lunch. I need to let you know that the state has rested. So their portion of the case for now is complete. The plan moving forward is that we are going to be finished for the day. So you're going to be excused. We all appreciate your patience in this matter. There's a lot of starts and stops of these kind of cases and a lot of changes that happen for good reason. So we all appreciate your patience and your efforts. We're going to be excused today. Tomorrow, we're going to give you an extra half hour in the morning. So you don't need to be here until 9. I hope that will work for everybody. I assume it will. So we're going to start at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning with our first witness, and we'll move forward accordingly. Is everybody okay with that? All right. I need to stress the admonition more because the closer we get to the end, the more questions you may be asked from parties. And you've already heard my speeches multiple times. So you took an oath and you're doing good. So we appreciate that. Before you leave, you are admonished by the court that it is your duty not to converse among yourselves or to converse with any other person on any subject of the trial. And it is your duty not to form or express an opinion thereon until the case is finally submitted to you. This includes no individual research on the parties, attorneys, or claims. All right, you got an early afternoon, and we'll see you at 9 tomorrow. Thank you.
All right, the jury.
All right, y'all, the state, oh God, I forgot I was on mute. I was mute. All right, y'all, so the state's rested.
Please be seated.
We'll start day 7.
Counsel, anything else we need to cover?
Get this uploaded. It didn't take
Everyone's
very
seated,
long.
so.
All right, everybody, have a good afternoon. Be safe.
All right.
Tomorrow.
All right, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Stay safe out there.